I'll start coughing. You can try to help. Is it first name Michael? So tonight is part of our play.
I feel like the city got ripped off. They knew what they were supposed to do, but
No, she's trying to just get her, and she said structure.
yes. But even then, even the company that did the design was late on what what they were tasked with. Yeah. Wow. It's mind-boggling that it's really not. Yeah. But if we could do it, great. Great.
Finally, it's ready.
And speaking to either microphone.
Try to speak with both, because then it will.
All right. Good.
That way, if you happen to turn your head.
Yeah. I'm good.
She just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Who's going to call? Is he going to show?
I know, I was thinking. So I'm thinking I'm late.
We're going to start in 2 minutes.
I am going to call this meeting of the Rancho Cordova City Council to order on this Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. Ask that the clerk call the roll.
As we rush back to our seats.
Oh, there's the clerk. Very good.
Councilmember McGarvey.
Here.
Councilmember Budge. Councilmember Terry.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gatewood is absent. Mayor Sander.
Here. And Madam Clerk, if you would announce the meeting's video playback and recording schedule, please.
The meeting of the Rancho Cordova City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the Local Government Affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air on Friday, January 24th at 6 p.m. and Saturday, January 25th at 6 p.m. A DVD copy is also available for checkout from the library branch. A copy can also be ordered from the City Clerk's Department, and a webcast of this meeting will also be available on the city's website within 48 hours of adjournment of this meeting.
All right, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation. The invocation will be given by Reverend Michael Dack from the United Church of Christ. And I'm going to ask Officer Jose de la Cruz to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Good evening to you. It's good to be with you on this day after the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And now I'd invite you to join me in a time of prayer. God of love and justice, we gather as leaders and citizens of Rancho Cordova to do the work of building and maintaining a strong and vibrant community. We come together with different skills, gifts, and resources, for we are a diverse community, including people of all ages and backgrounds, of different races, ethnicities, languages, and faiths. In this season of remembrance of the work of Dr. King, we recognize the many things that unite us. For at heart, we are all brothers and sisters in one human family. As such, we seek peace in our lives and freedom from violence in our community. We pray for the health and well-being of our families and friends. We hope for economic opportunity and pray that our children may have access to good education. In these short and chilly days of winter, we remember those among us who are suffering and struggling. We especially lift up the homeless and give thanks for all the heart volunteers and supporters who provide winter shelter to those living on the street. In a time of political division and turmoil, we pray that our local, state, and national leaders will make good choices, acting with wisdom and courage for the well-being of all the people. And in this setting, we give thanks for committed community leaders, dedicated city staff, and engaged citizens. We give thanks for the freedom we enjoy to come together, to speak and to listen to one another as we seek to make our community a better and better place in which to live and to work. I offer this prayer in recognition that we are all children of one Creator who loves each one of us more than we can love even ourselves. Amen.
Thank you very much for that invocation. We have a special guest with us tonight who is not on our agenda. So without objection, I'm going to slightly modify the agenda for our next item. And I would like to recognize Bishop Lovelace from the Center of Praise Ministry. Bishop, you are with us in the room. Could you join me at the podium, please? And I would ask Cyrus if you would join me as well. Welcome, Bishop. Thank you. So the three of us and the majority of the council and a lot of staff here in the room and police officers here in the room spent a very special day yesterday, very special morning yesterday, on Dr. Martin Luther King's special day of service. And we spent it at a facility owned and operated by your church and your congregation. And for those of you who don't know, we were celebrating yesterday the beginning of a Rancho Cordova Youth Center, which will be a partnership between his congregation and the city of Rancho Cordova, using the Police Activities League as the venue to offer youth services and activities for children in Rancho Cordova. It's an extremely exciting day. And yesterday we presented the bishop with a very special item, which we very rarely do. It's a precious item for our organization, the city of Rancho Cordova. It's a key to the city. And this was an extraordinary gesture by your congregation and by you in the leadership position you hold in the long-term commitment to Rancho Cordova and to our kids. And we just wanted to take this opportunity, since you were here and we're talking about that lease arrangement on our agenda tonight, to once again present this to you with all of our viewers at home watching and our audience here in city council chambers. And if you don't mind, we would set up a picture with the entire city council, with you and the key, anyone else you'd like to join you from your team. And just thank you again for this remarkable partnership that's starting between the city of Rancho Cordova and your wonderful ministry. Thank you.
I just add a few more comments. We actually became aware of the bishop's desire about providing this opportunity for the youth in our community to have the space not too long ago. We had our police officers, the Police Activities League had built a relationship with the bishop. They made the introduction, and they were in need of some facility where they could have the events, where they could have the a center available to them. And so our idea, thought, was possibly having the opportunity to use the center for occasional activities, for some work that we need to do in that center. And then very soon the discussions evolved with the Center of Praise as suggesting and recommending that they will give the space for a long-term lease to the city free of charge. So this is a 25-year lease with an option to extend for another 25 years. And in addition to that, the church also has a nonprofit arm, and they are actively involved and engaged. Serve Sacramento is the nonprofit arm, and they are actively engaged in working with our school district, with our community members, and bringing various programs and activities to the church. So we are very grateful. This has been an extremely generous offer, and pleasure to continue working with the Center of Praise for with our continued partnership. Thank you.
Everybody
No, don't do that.
Sure. Bishop, if you'd like to make any comments?
Well, certainly, Honorable Mayor, and to the City Council, and to all that are here today, I certainly want to thank you from the depths of my heart for this tremendous, I call it a blessing and an honor to receive this on behalf of myself and certainly on behalf of the Center of Praise Ministries. As I shared in brief remarks yesterday, I'm a resident here in Rancho Cordova, and our church, the Center of Praise, was planted here 30 years ago with 12 people. And now we have a little over 3,000 that attend regular services, and we moved the worship services to Midtown Sacramento when we purchased the cathedral, but we've never lost our care and our love for this community. And we certainly had a heart for our youth and seeing our youth being able to be cared for and to come together in this partnership with Chief Pittman and certainly with our city manager, Cyrus. It has been a tremendous encouragement. And I leave here tonight knowing that not only am I a proud resident of Rancho Cordova, but we have a lifelong partnership that will continue to touch generations to come. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Okay, we will resume our regular agenda with presentations and move on to item number 5. And is it Stacy or Daniel or both? Daniel, very good. And colleagues, if you want to join me in the center, we'll hand out some checks.
So good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and guests. I'm Daniel Leonardich, Community Enhancement Management Technician for the city. We're here tonight to present some ceremonial checks to a couple organizations that received grant funding. Mayor, well, you're out here. Let's start with the first check with the Cordova Community Council Foundation for their Rancho Cordova River City Concert Band enhancements. The Rancho Cordova River City Concert Band enhancement band has a continuous partnership with the Cordova Community Council and the community. The band provides an extensive range of music to multiple venue types, including full band concerts and small ensemble presentations. Band President Lydia Braden and Band Vice President Melanie Freer, are accepting the check for $18,000. The second check this evening is going to the Folsom Cordova Unified School District for the purchase of outdoor seating at Walnutwood High School and a passenger van shared between Walnutwood High School, Kinney High School, and Prospect Day School. Until now, Walnutwood High School had no outdoor seating, which was decreasing culture and student interaction. The school district continues to offer extended learning opportunities to students, and now having a van being shared across the campuses enables students to take advantage of those activities. High school principals Annie Conover and Michelle Flowers, along with student Anthony Lacayo, are accepting the check for $45,965.
Perfect. We're going to dinner.
The third and final check this evening is also for Folsom Cordova Unified School District for the Family Engagement Summer Academy and the After School Education and Safety, or ACES program. Now, the district offers STEM-focused programming both after school through the ACES program and during the summer through the Summer Academy. The programs keep young people safe and provide extra academic support to students who most need it. The Summer Academy is provided as a 4-week program designed to reduce summer learning loss and is offered at no cost to the families. Community Engagement Specialist Angela Griffin and Kelly is here to accept a check for $70,000. And this concludes tonight's check presentations. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes item number 5. And Mr. City Manager, do we have another extra presentation?
It's not I think the bishop and the Center of Praise had some small tokens and some gifts that they wanted to present to the council. I just wanted to be sure that we take this opportunity and do that right now.
Oh, you're right.
Well, good afternoon. Mayor, Rancho City Council, on behalf of Center of Praise Ministry, the entire congregation, our Bishop Partner M. Lovelace Jr., and our advisory council, we have a token of our appreciation, our love, our partnership, and our venture together into the Rancho Cordova City Youth Center. These are tokens from our heart, from the love of our congregation. Our congregation themselves have stood by this partnership. They are committed to this partnership.
Thank you.
And if you accept these as a token of our love and our appreciation.
Oh, very nice. Now, that's a coffee drinker's coffee mug. There's no doubt about that.
And we also have a very special towel that's in there that really has a scripture and a word on it. And just talking about the servanthood and serving the community. And that's what we're all about. And that's what we're partnering together on, the servanthood. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. I misspoke earlier. We are not done with item number 5. We were just done with item 5.1. We're going to move on to our Police Chief, Chris Pittman, who I think has some introductions to be made. Police of Chief or Chief of Police? Yes.
Yes, Mayor. Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor. Chris Pittman, Chief of Police. Tonight, I actually have the pleasure of introducing 2 new sergeants that we have at our Rancho Cordova Police Department and the Sheriff's East Division. We recently started a new onboarding process where we bring in new officers and new supervisors and new managers and acclimate them into what we're all about, what the importance of our contract is with the city of Rancho Cordova, the community here, and this will be the culmination of that. It's a 2-week onboarding training that we do, and as we complete it, we wanted to bring them in and introduce them to the council tonight. So, oh, right here, come on up. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sergeants Jim Petrinovich and Sergeant Kelly Manis Duncan. Kelly is on our east side of the house, and Jim is going to be on our Rancho Cordova side. They're actually partners. They both work on the graveyard shift together, so you probably won't see them a whole lot. But so daylight hours, they've been with us for the last few weeks, but now they're going to their regular shift in the evening time. I just tell you a little bit about them both. So Jim and I actually used to work together at North Patrol back in 2012. I was a watch commander, and he was a deputy there at our North Patrol division. But Jim started his career at the Sheriff's Department in 2003. He's worked North Patrol. He just came from our Folsom Dam Security Bureau, which is another contract of ours. He's worked our Central Patrol, at the jail, and all around our department, 7 different divisions. He's also had 7 years experience on our SWAT team. So great experience here coming to our team. Very lucky to have him. Kelly has actually, her and I have not worked very much together, but I've known her my whole career pretty much. She started in 1999 with the Sheriff's Office, worked both jails, worked our centralized investigations division as a detective, our special investigations, our academy, and then also right here in Rancho for 5 years as a deputy. So she was here in 2007 to 2012. So like I've always told you, they always want to come back. So Kelly really wanted to come to this division, and we're very lucky to have them both. So that was my introduction to people that we're very lucky to have here as supervisors. So
Very good.
thank you.
Well, I guess if they're on graveyards, you welcome them to the dark side, right? Yeah. I didn't realize the chief had also worked the dark side. That's kind of interesting. Okay, next up, I think we have Dahlia with another employee introduction.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, city manager, and our lovely public. I am super excited tonight to introduce Margarita Dronov. She is a new assistant city engineer in the stormwater section in the Public Works Department. She was selected out of 61 applications. I know, I wanted to make sure to get that in there.
Wow.
She will be supporting the section with overseeing maintenance of our stormwater facilities, addressing resident complaints, coordinating stormwater capital improvement projects, helping with the implementation of the water quality regulatory programs for the city, and overall just coordination with other city departments as needed. So we are so super excited to have Margarita on board, and I would like to turn it over to her to tell you a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Dahlia. I'm very grateful to be here at the City of Rancho Cordova. A little bit about my background. I actually grew up in this area, so as a little girl, I remember begging to stay with my grandparents to see the 4th of July parade down Coloma bright and early in July. I earned my civil engineering degree at Sacramento State, and I received a Master of Science in Environmental Engineering, attending Stanford as a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow and Tau Beta Pi Honor Society Fellow. My previous experience prior to the City of Rancho Cordova includes consulting internships in water resources, pipelines, hydropower, and research at a variety of universities like Sac State, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Texas A&M, and of course Stanford. My husband, Dr. Veniamin Dronov, and I are blessed to be back in the Sacramento area, and I'm looking forward to the City of Rancho Cordova. Thank you.
Good, welcome. All right, next up, we are on to item 5.4, and we have a presentation or a briefing from California American Water. 5.3. I have, that's a repeat item. Rancho Cordova Police Department.
It's a different item.
Okay, we will go back to the Rancho Cordova Police Department. Cal Lamb, wait just a second.
Again, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Chris Pittman, Chief of Police. Going to be joining me tonight is Sergeant Rich Meredith. He's our administrative sergeant, also the sergeant of our Youth Services Unit. Tonight, we have the great honor and pleasure to discuss our employee recognition program we do at our Rancho Cordova Police Department East Division. We have an Employee of the Quarter program that every quarter we select an individual that exemplifies what we stand for. Their peers, their supervisors will submit their names, and then we will select them to represent us as our Employee of the Quarter. Their names go on a plaque at the rear of our office for all the officers to see. And at the end of the year, out of those 4, we actually picked an Employee of the Year. And so tonight, we thought it would be very fitting to share this together with you and discuss our Employee of the Year. This person does not know they're getting an Employee of the Year, so it's going to be a surprise. But the individual that we selected, as you can imagine, we have such great people we work with on a daily basis, so it's a very tough choice. But this person is extremely humble, very dedicated to the community, as you will obviously agree with once I tell you who the person is. But an amazing individual that has done such a phenomenal job for us. I'm going to steal one of Rich's lines, but this person is never going to be a star on ice, but she's definitely a rock star here in Rancho Cordova. So Tracy, would you please come join us? So, as you all know, Tracy has done a phenomenal job for us at Rancho Cordova Police Department. She was a patrol officer, a field training officer, and most recently came over to our school resource officer program. A job we had to convince her to take, believe it or not. But now every single day, it goes without fail, I get a text thanking me for convincing her to take this job. And it is a job she has done it amazingly well for us here in the city. I know no one that has done such an incredible job as you. So thank you, Tracy, for all you do. And you well deserve the Officer of the Year. So. Rich, did you want to?
Hey, you have to stay up here. Yeah, I would just like noted that he did actually steal that line from me. So I'm Tracy's supervisor, and I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge the amazing work that she does. I don't have to tell anybody on this council. She's our Rancho Cordova rock star, but I just wanted to share my first experience when I first met Tracy was at our communications center, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of her at first. You know, she kind of freaked me out a little bit. But as I've come here to Rancho Cordova, she's so passionate about the youth here and her kids. I mean, that's what she terms them as her kids. And her buy-in for our community and our youth here is amazing. And I know you guys have all seen her out there at the spot, right, doing her handshakes in the morning. And I didn't know about that, and I drove by it as a patrol supervisor. And I've never seen kids so happy to go to school. I thought there was a riot on or something, because these kids were running across the street into her arms to do their handshakes. And it was, for me personally, being in this business for almost 20 years, I've never seen somebody do their job with the passion that she does. And for me as her supervisor, it's a very humbling experience. So I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge her and thank her for the work that she does.
Thank you.
You earned it. Would you like to say a couple words to the council at all?
Beach.
Yeah.
I feel like Bishop yesterday. I feel like I'm going to faint. It's an extreme honor for me to be here, to receive this Officer of the Year, to be standing before you guys today. I appreciate your guys' support of me and my vision with my kids, my heart for these kids. You guys support me like nobody else have. You guys give me handshakes as well, and I don't know. I feel like Bishop. I feel like I'm going to faint. Thank you. Thank you for receiving me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If council wouldn't mind, we'd sure like to get a picture, if that's okay.
Could we have our YSU team come up, please?
You gotta catch her. News and the press.
Guys, can we get in so we don't get this podium in the photo? So kind of shift a little bit this way. Tall people in the back. Trying to pull Tracy here.
Thank you, council, very much.
All right, now we will move on to item 5.4, and we probably could not have made a more difficult opener for California American Water than to have to follow that
Make this exciting, would
and
you?
talk about a rate increase.
Yeah, who wants to talk about water now? Congratulations, that is awesome and fantastic. I have 2 kids in another school district, and they love their school resource officers. It's so important to have that positive role model there on school, and also there, frankly, in this day and age, to protect them against the unthinkable. So appreciate what you do, really heartfelt thank you. Let's talk water and rates now. Very exciting subject. I guess every 3 years or so I get to come talk to you about our PUC proposals.
They're going down, right? That's so exciting.
Isn't that great news? So here's the good news. I came 3 years ago and we talked about our last general rate case, which we'd proposed an increase. At the end of the day, when that case was decided, it ended up being about a 1 penny per month increase for the average customer. Because some of the things we proposed were denied, and we also were able to find some cost savings through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the federal tax legislation that was passed a couple years ago, and some changes in our capital structure. So that one was a win and did hold rates flat for the average customer. There were some other changes in there to rate design and things like that impacts can vary for customers. But in general, that was a good result that held our revenue result steady for the community. The map that I am showing now, I'm sure you are all familiar with. These are the service areas in the Sacramento region where we are the water service provider. We have 2 in Rancho Cordova, suburban Rosemont, which is one of our largest systems, or the largest system in the Sacramento area, certainly serves unincorporated Sacramento County and western Rancho Cordova. And then we also have Security Park in eastern Rancho Cordova, which is probably currently our smallest system right now. It serves the old Security Park rocket testing facility, and there's commercial activity out there and possibly growth in the future. And all in Northern California, we serve about 60,000 connections. The bulk of our customers are here in Sacramento County, but we also have customers in Yolo County, Merced, and Sonoma County. And we serve a variety of communities here in Sacramento, from down in the Delta, Isleton, and Walnut Grove, to parts of Citrus Heights, Rancho Cordova, the Antelope area, South Sacramento, western Placer County, Arden area as well. So we have a number of systems. Most of them serve groundwater. One of the important things we're doing in this region is trying to do more conjunctive use, where we use a combination of surface water and groundwater in each of the 22 water systems in Sacramento County. And we are getting there. It is an investment to make those changes and be able to use both types of water. But from a regional perspective and for our regional management of the common resources, it's very important that we continue to do that. We have about 650 miles of pipe in the Sacramento region. We have 25 storage reservoirs, 17 treatment plants, and over 100 wells, because most of our water does come from groundwater. And in Northern California, we paid about $1.9 million in property taxes and franchise fees last year. We also are proud to support the community. We've given major grants and annual support to the American River Parkway Foundation, which is a favorite of mine. We also support the Cordova Community Council, Sacramento Food Bank, and a lot of other worthy organizations throughout the community. Getting into rates, how each dollar is spent in the Sacramento District. This is an important one. When you take a dollar and you say, where does that money go? This is important for a couple reasons, and one of the reasons is because it tells the story of our high fixed costs. Local operations are about 30% of the budget. That's our local staff who are out turning the valves, running the treatment plants, doing what they need to do. Our central services are things we've combined for efficiency, like billing, accounting, things like that account for about 9%, 8% of the Total cost of water. Taxes are about 10%. That's everything from federal income tax down to the local property taxes and franchise fees we pay. And infrastructure, which is obviously critically important to supplying water, is where we spend the most money. About 44 cents out of every dollar goes towards infrastructure to provide water supply. Smallest or second smallest piece of this pie is water production, which is what we use to pump the water out of the ground, the chemicals we use to treat the water, and if we're purchasing water from a neighboring agency that has surface water, what we're paying them for it. And that's important because that's really the only big variable cost in our budget. Most of these costs are fixed. We can't change the size of a pipe easily. We can't lay people off because we're selling less water. We still need the folks to go out and read the meters, turn the valves, and run the treatment plants every day. I am proud of our customer benefits, and one of the biggest issues we've talked about quite a bit in this state in the past couple of years around water has been ratepayer assistance. And California American Water has one of the best low-income ratepayer assistance programs in the state. It provides a 20% discount on our fixed and our meter charges for customers who qualify for the SMUD or PG&E care program, which is 200% of the federal poverty level, and that amount varies based on the household size. We also, some other things we offer are finally no-fee credit card processing. We actually had to get state law changed to be able to take credit and debit and prepaid cards without charging an additional fee, but that's been a big customer benefit for us. We have a very good emergency notification system. Unfortunately, we've had to use it in other parts of the state in the last couple of years with wildfires. We have disaster relief benefits in the case there's ever a disaster in the area. We have a very good customer web portal called My Water that we really encourage folks to sign up for. And we have an excellent conservation program that includes WaterWise house calls and free conservation devices. Information about those programs, by the way, I should say, you can always give us a call at 916-568-4201 for conservation or low-income ratepayer assistance, or visit our website, which is californiaamwater.com. And so if customers are watching tonight, that's a great way for them to learn more about those programs. In terms of what's in our application, as I said, every 3 years we're required by the PUC to come in, file a review of our rates, make a proposal. It's a quasi-judicial process. There is a division of ratepayer advocates that advocates on behalf of the customers. There's an administrative law judge that hears the facts. That is an open book process with full discovery, disclosure, accounting review. So it's a very involved process. It takes at least 18 months. Often it takes longer than that. So we filed in July of last year to make rates for 21, 22, and 23, 2021, 22, 2023. We expect the decision in December 2020 with the rates effective January 1 the following year. And we have requested a revenue increase of about 14% for the year 2021. I will say that's actually smaller now because we have built 4 water treatment plants since then that have gone into service and are serving customers, so those are now included in rates. As you all know, we typically get much less than we ask for from the PUC. Changes occur, they find ways to push us for savings and costs, so no request is final until the PUC approves it. And in this case, it's really focused on infrastructure investment, and our hope in this case is to get on a steady track of rehabilitation and replacement of assets through programmatic expenditures, things like well rehabs. We have over 100 wells. It would be nice to be on a steady program to replace those. Getting onto a steady cycle of main replacements. It's better to replace them occasionally as you need rather than let that maintenance defer, that replacement defer, and end up with a big challenge down the road with many areas needing attention. And then last week, actually a week ago today, the PUC was here, conducted a public hearing. We had about 20 customers come out, 7 of them testified. I think the biggest concern we heard about was rate design. And that's really important for you all to know because in the PUC, and really for any water utility, you have to do 2 things. First, you have to set your budget and decide what your budget is going to be. How much is it going to cost to run that business of providing safe, clean water to the community? And once you establish that budget and you figure that out, then you have to figure out how do you do a rate design that will collect the amount you need to meet your budget. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but rate designs vary greatly in this region. And there are different philosophies behind them in terms of collecting fixed costs through fixed charges versus fixed costs through variable charges, and what you want the impacts to be and what you want the price signals to be. But we definitely heard some about rate design, and we do have a conservation-oriented tiered rate design right now that the PUC took note that there were some customers that had concerns about it. Our key drivers, as I mentioned, are really pretty straightforward. In this case, we're requesting steady capital investment to make sure our systems are resilient in the future. We have increased production costs. Again, we're adding treatment plants for new contaminants that cost more money to run. Labor expenses are going up, administrative and general expense, and then the depreciation expense on the assets that are in the ground. This is the one that I think is the most telling, and I'd like to spend a couple minutes on it. This will probably be like paint drying for some of you, but for a water wonk like me, it's very interesting. This shows the rate comparison for 4 water systems: California American Water on the left, Golden State Water, second from left, Sac Suburban, which is a large, primarily groundwater producing water agency north of the river, serving large unincorporated part, and then Sacramento County, which also serves a portion of Rancho Cordova. And generally when you're paying a water rate, if you're metered and you're not paying a flat rate, you're normally paying a meter charge and then a quantity charge based on how much water you use. And what you see in this scenario, I guess I'll start with the right with Sacramento County. The large gray box on the top of Sacramento County's rates are basically part of their meter charge. So if you combine that gray box with the blue box, that is their fixed charges every month. The gray part represents the capital facilities fee that they charge, the Zone 40 charge, and then the blue represents their meter charge, the orange the quantity charge. So you see there, and also with Sac Suburban, districts that are collecting a lot of their revenue from fixed charges, higher fixed charges. On the other hand, Golden State Water, Cal-Am, both PUC regulated, both have smaller metered charges and higher quantity charges to collect the revenue needed per system. I will say there are 22 different water districts in the county of Sacramento. None of them have the exact same rates or the exact same costs. It's all about trade-offs and balances. It's about how much water you're selling to each customer, what your mix of customers is, commercial versus residential, and what the age of your infrastructure is and the cost of your supply is. So the one thing I guess we have in common is that there's no real commonality in any rates in Sacramento County because everyone has their own costs that they need to meet, and they design their own rates to meet that cost.
So can I ask a couple questions
Sure,
while you have
absolutely.
this? Just to make sure that we all know what you're talking about in terms of your definitions. So when you talk about meter charge, is what goes into the meter charge? Is that the cost to install the meters in the houses or what?
No. So the meter charge represents a charge that you can vary based on how much of your revenue you want to collect through a fixed charge. And the meter charge will always in each system vary based on the size of the water meter. The larger the water meter,
Right.
the more infrastructure you need behind it to
Quarter,
meet
1
that
inch, whatever.
demand.
Yeah.
But if we were to collect all of our fixed costs, which are 90% of our revenue requirement is fixed costs, and our meter charge would be 90% of our bill. And here you can see it's a much smaller amount for the typical residential customer.
Like with Sac Suburban?
Yeah, so
So-
Sac Suburban has a model, I don't know what their percentages are, but Sac Suburban has a model where they are collecting most of their fixed costs through their fixed charge. Similarly, Sacramento County, which has a capital facilities charge and a meter charge, those are steady charges, the same every month. They are collecting most of their revenue through those fixed charges.
Okay, so then the volumetric charge, that's the part that homeowners or business users, that's the discretionary part that they get to control.
Right.
Okay. based on
Correct.
how much water they use.
Right. And with both Golden State and Cal-Am, you see a rate design that pushes fixed costs into that volumetric usage charge to try to promote conservation by making the water used more expensive. One of the benefits of that rate design is that the essential water use used in the house is less expensive because you're relying on some of your recovery on high usage, whether it's seasonal or just higher users.
Well, and it also gives people the ability to a certain extent, to control their bill based on how much they use and the time of day they use it and whatever. But
Yep.
because, and that's important, because one of the things that people in some of the neighborhoods on the west side of Rancho Cordova have complained about is the fact that when you all purchase water systems in other parts of the North State that need upgrades, everyone's afraid that they're paying the cost of upgrading those older systems.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
This slide does explain a lot, because
Yeah, it does.
the majority of complaints I get are obviously from, in Rancho Cordova, from Cal-Am, not Golden State.
Right.
Sometimes I get water quality complaints from Golden State. I don't seem to get those from Cal-Am for whatever reason. But the loudest voices I hear on the Cal-Am protest list are gardeners who have seen their water rates just, quintuple or go up tenfold over what they were used to. And so that's basically, for all the effort we talk about, locally grown and for the ordinances
Okay,
we've
so
done.
you're talking about those of us who grow food.
Who grow
Okay.
food are basically put out of business by this leveraged price that makes you pay for the amount of water you use. I know a family actually in the Golden State system that is spending, and they're not a high-income family by any means, but they're probably spending $4,000 a year on water at Golden State to irrigate a very, very productive, probably quarter to third acre lot. And they're sitting there doing the math. We're growing all of this. We're being, great for the environment. We're being good for our neighbors. And we're just getting penalized to heck for having done that. If we just paved it all over, if we just turned it all to rock, we'd save, $5,000 a year. We can go to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And that is a stupid choice for a policy.
It is one of the big policy discussions statewide with California Water right now is what is appropriate outdoor water use. And we get great value in our community from our shade trees here. They help reduce our electricity bills. They
Right.
help, reduce the urban heat sinks and things. So
Air quality, it's
Air quality.
enormous. I mean, I could do a total diatribe on lawns and air quality, because
Yes.
lawns are a remarkably powerful tool to maintain air quality.
Yep.
Because of their high metabolism.
On
But-
the other hand, I think the state feels like if the only time you walk on your lawn anymore is to mow it, you should probably think about something else. So there's a balance that needs to be struck, and certainly what the PUC heard from some of our customers. And the commissioner that's on our case and is in attendance is, I think, a lifelong Sacramento resident. Certainly, she lived here for many years and served on the SMUD board beforehand. So it's a good policy question and a good question for the PUC to consider in our rate design in the future, is what is that balance of, conservation and affordability versus the need for efficiency and curtailing water use outdoors. It's above my pay grade, though.
I know colleagues, as we talk about replacing dead trees and dealing with dead trees and replacing stumps with trees, this is the problem we're going to run up against, because we're going to ask people to water those trees to try to restore our missing canopy in Rancho Cordova, and this is the barrier they're going to run up against, because now instead of having a $50 water bill, suddenly they're going to have a $75 water bill because they have to water the tree.
So the offer I would make to you and the suggestion I would have, and I'm sure it stands for Golden State Water in Sacramento County as well, is come talk to us about that and let's see what we can do. We have a lot of very good technology, a lot of ways to make irrigation more efficient, and we have programs and staff members dedicated to helping the community do that. So it was actually something we talked about with a customer here last week, was about, I think she got a tree, I don't know if it was from the city or the Tree Foundation or whom supplied it, but I think if we work together and partner on that and provide good information, we can help customers plant trees and do it in a way that's efficient with water and doesn't drive up water bills unnecessarily.
Good. Very good. Thank you.
So I will very quickly close on a positive note. Infrastructure, we are building a lot of projects. The probably one that's most relevant there is our ribbon cutting with the chamber. And Councilman McGarvey, I think you're in there somewhere. I believe you're, yeah, there you are. You're behind the scissors. That was our treatment plant in Lincoln Village area that we built 2 years ago that's working. We're also building, finishing off our need for new storage tanks in some of our Sacramento area systems. And in this case, as I mentioned, really trying to get into programmatic spending for main replacements, backup generators, which are a continuing issue. Even though we have good generators, the Air Quality Board says they get old and we have to replace them because they don't meet new air quality standards. Improvements on SCADA, which allows us to control our water systems and monitor them remotely. And well installations and rehabilitation, really important that we get ahead of the curve on our well maintenance and rehabilitation because we have a lot of them out here and they're critical for our water supply.
And SCADA would stand for something technical?
System control and data acquisition.
Super.
So yeah, something technical.
Thank you.
There's my information. Does the council have any other questions or anything else I can?
Just, I have a consideration for staff. It's Mike, oh, Mike is here. Cyrus. At some point, these water rates, and I think Cal-Am is about 38% higher than Golden State, roughly. I was just looking at that chart.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood anyway. At some point, that becomes an inhibition to economic development. You know, the water rate gets so high in Rancho Cordova that if you're a business that's going to use water, that becomes punitive, and you can't be on that side of town or something. I'm just curious, we might want to talk offline about how often that has happened, and Evan, I don't know what your solution would be for that particular problem, but as we seek to find ways to redevelop, for example, Folsom Boulevard, I don't know if a restaurant user or an apartment complex, whatever, would find, you know, that sort of a water rate onerous in context to the region.
Right.
And that would be another detriment to not investing in infill when we desperately need people for all sorts of environmental reasons and others to do that investment in infill.
Absolutely. So water is still a good value in this area. We're still paying less than a penny a gallon. It should not be driving economic considerations in any community in Northern California right now. I would say we'd have different rate structures for commercial, understanding that a tiered rate structure that increases costs per unit is not appropriate. You can have two restaurants, the same size, same fixtures, same dishwasher model, all of that, and one restaurant just has better food, serves twice as many people, and uses twice as much water. So you don't want to put too much of an additional burden on that commercial activity for that. So I think that it's also something certainly worth talking to the Public Utilities Commission about. I think this crop of commissioners, this group is more attuned to the needs of economic development in this state and affordability. I think they've seen that we successfully weathered the largest drought in recorded history in California a couple years ago, and we did it and we kept customers in water, and so I think their focus is changing to some different things in terms of affordability and economic development. So it's worth keeping the conversation up.
Other questions? All right.
Thank you all very much for having me.
Okay, now I think we are done with item number 5. We're on to number 6, public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council for any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time by completing and submitting a speaker card to our city clerk. For items on the agenda, speakers will be called up to the podium by me at that point on the agenda when the item will be heard. Speakers are encouraged to keep comments to 3 minutes or less and to state their name and community of residence. Do we have any cards turned in?
I do not have any cards.
No cards turned in. Does anyone like to make a comment? Going, gone. All right, we are on to item number 7, council reports, and Mr. McGarvey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't able to come to the dedication ceremony of the Future Youth Center, but I'm glad that you were, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about it. The only other thing I'm talk about is the meeting I went to today with the Mosquito Vector Control Board. It was kind of interesting. There were fewer mosquitoes around, and yesterday because of all the flooding in the water we had the year before. And in 2019, it was when we ended it there in the rainy season. But now that we have about 2/3 of our normal amount of rainfall, and they're expecting more mosquitoes. All the water that we got from all that rain and everything kind of flooded out some of the places that the mosquitoes like to go through the winter in, and they got kind of flooded out. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happened with that. I know that there's been less West Nile virus, but they're watching that. And then the new one they're concerned about is that 80s population, which is really found in Citrus Heights. So they're watching that very carefully. They haven't it in any place else yet, but that was brought in by someone with a plant. And so the usual things that they talk about was make sure you don't have any water, standing water and all that sort of thing, and you're unless it's something that you're watering, but just let things stand like that. That didn't take long for mosquitoes to multiply many times. So pay attention to that, and that's about what I've got.
All right, Ms. Budge.
Okie dokie. Regional Transit met, and I just encourage anybody, we've been hearing from people who are trying out the Smart Ride and trying out the new bus routes or old new bus routes in Rancho. And please be sure to continue to let us know when you have issues or think something is actually working. So far, we're not hearing about anything that's actually working, but maybe that will happen one of these days. Bob and Garrett and I attended the most marvelous lunch last week with the ambassador to the United States from Korea, Ambassador Lee. He was here to present beautiful peace medals to the people who had fought in the Korean War. And he did that downtown. You may have seen that on the television. And then we had a lunch. We attended a lunch with him. And we also gave him a key to the city. He is in very good company. The only other ambassador we have presented a key to or have been able to meet with was the ambassador from Moldova. A very nice gentleman. He brought the new consul general from San Francisco with him, Mr. Jun Young Park, and they have pledged to provide more books and materials for the Korean section in the Rancho Cordova Library, which is very nice.
Nice.
I thought it was worth noting in the grapevine that we should celebrate some students at Cordova High, or not just Cordova High, but some Rancho Cordova students. Students at Cordova High participated in the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow contest and won awards in STEM subjects. And then also at Cordova High, they have a partnership with Safe Credit Union. So the Business Technology Academy participated in the latest reality fair, learning budgeting skills for life, which of course are extremely important. And then the funniest thing, second grade students at Cordova Gardens hatched, raised, and released Chinook salmon. So our students are just doing all sorts of fascinating things, and the majority of this really has to do with it is always somehow intertwined with STEM education. So, for instance, they say that the kids, they studied the science of the fish, their life cycles, they measured their growth, they drew their diagrams, and, oh, by the way, they wrote letters to their fish. Okie dokie. So, dear fish. David and the Rancho Cordova Sports Academy, Sports Hall of Fame.
Rancho Cordova Athletic Association
Athletic
or the Hall
Association,
of Fame, whichever.
yes, do a great job in recognizing Rancho Cordova athletes. But we probably should recognize also that two of our local athletes have just been inducted into the Sacramento Sports Hall of Fame. Actually, they're going to be inducted next Saturday. So Randy Lurch, who is a wonderful baseball player, who grew up here. His entire family was very much a participant over many decades in Rancho Cordova. He played with the Philadelphia Phillies, the Milwaukee Brewers, Montreal Expos, and the San Francisco Giants. So he would be very proud of those teams today. And then also Gerald Wilhite, who's best known as a football player at Cordova. However, he was an exceptional he was not a football player at Cordova. It's the other way around. He went on to play football at college and in the minor leagues, even though he never played football at Cordova High. He was a wrestler at Cordova High. So I thought it was worth celebrating the accomplishments of those two people. And the Park District has just delivered to us their current flyer on all of the different classes that all of us and our children can take. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating, the diversity of programs that they are doing today. And then finally, I think it's appropriate that we adjourn tonight in memory of the dear grandmother who was killed in the accident the other day. It's an incredibly sad event, and our hearts go out to her family. So, thank you, David. We don't have a name yet. The name was released at one point, but then in the newspaper it said the family asked not to have the name released.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Terry.
Well, I'll echo what we've already heard a little bit about, but the Center for Praise contribution to our community with the youth facility, I think, is a very, very exciting time for our community. And, my thanks, Cyrus, to you and staff and everybody else who helped make that possible. It really, really is exciting, especially, and I'll just have to readily admit this, that I drove over there and, you saw what looked like an operating building there in church, and then there was a boarded up one across the street, and I just assumed we were getting the boarded up one across the street until I got there on yesterday. So even more exciting to realize what kind of an amazing facility we're actually going to be inheriting. Garrett and I both attended the 2x2 with Sac City Unified for the new year. This was our first one in quite a while, I think. I don't think we had one last semester. But it's a little tough over there when it comes to budgets, and everybody can read about what's going on in the B. It was interesting. I did ask, I want to say in early December, because I know that we had scheduled at some point for the superintendent to come and present and talk about their summer program that we funded, and I was wondering why I hadn't seen him yet, and then I realized that was the one night that I came in at about 8 o'clock so that we could vote on the one item, so he came earlier that night, and I just didn't see him. So they're very appreciative, obviously, of what we're doing for them. The really, really interesting thing, and I'll just share it, and I don't know, Garrett, when you speak, if you have any more to add, but one of the unique things, and the superintendent actually asked for permission to do this, but I guess he was already kind of doing it, but they're really kind of leaning on the city, and I know there's an initiative now in the city of Sacramento around earmarking funds for youth. But the superintendent is really going around kind of the region, and especially to the city of Sacramento and the mayor, to point out the kinds of investments that we make here and why other cities should be stepping up to do what we do here. And I know that was also echoed a few years ago when I was mayor, and it was the 10th anniversary of Sunrise Elementary, and the principal there said he had never worked with a city that ever funded the kinds of things that we fund. And I think, one, yeah, we're a unique city. Another thing is we passed Measure H, and our taxpayers entrusted us with a lot more resources than a lot of other cities do in this region. But even the cities that have passed their own versions of that aren't doing what we're doing with it. And some of that is because of who we are and because of some of our financial structure, but it also speaks to the kinds of partnerships and bridges that we've built in our community. And how we're actually being held up as the standard in this region for how to partner with your city. And finally, the Air District has not met this year. That will meet on Thursday, so stay tuned. More stuff maybe to come next month.
Very well put. Thank you. Mr. Gatewood.
All right. So met with the 20 thought leaders of the Sacramento region. Interesting group of individuals talking about how they're trying to put plant jobs in Rancho Cordova, meeting with the Tech Council, and I'm looking to set up our first round of angel investors that will find tech companies and plant them into our city. So very exciting. Going to meet with Cyrus and bring the whole group together and see how that actually works. KP International having an ambassador fly in to come to our city to go and have lunch at our grocery store is amazing. Now, I don't think anyone really understands how amazing this is. This is the gentleman that actually sat on the other side and negotiated with Kim Jong-un and his dad and discussed about the armistice and getting rid of nuclear technology. And he actually had people at this group stand up and ask questions where he truthfully answered what he thought about nuclear proliferation, whether they can actually get rid of it, how scared North Korea. It's amazing, like mind blown. And they came in to our grocery store to hang out with us because it's such a highlight of what KP International is actually doing in that region, not just the grocery store, but now the karaoke bar, and then next to that, the plaza, and just the amazing things. So that's just amazing how well connected we are in the region. Sac City Unified, the other thing that Donald doesn't bring up is what a great relationship we actually have with them, to the point where, like, I don't know, because I've heard that we had a more of aggressive relationship, and now they're willing to basically do whatever they can to help out the Rancho Cordova schools, and it's nice to see a school district actually seeing what they can do to come to us. So not only do that, and then they have a lot of inside speak and inside ball game because he used to sit on the board, and they were like, "Hey, you ready for that strike? I don't know." And then so it's terrible what's happening in that school district, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a strike soon. One Hope ribbon cutting, so always good to help out our businesses. We right now, just so everyone knows, we are right now they're talking about Measure A. Rancho Cordova has decided to take a very big stance in Measure A and see what we can do to get the most money and for our roads. Our voters were very clear to me because they took the polls and said that they care mostly about roads and fixing potholes. And so I'm going at it as to get as much money back to Rancho Cordova to fix our roads and potholes. A lot more to come. I've gathered a lot of the cities around us, and we're going to see what we can do to get a 70-30 split and get as much of it towards our roads so that we have better roads in Rancho. That's basically it. Senator Praise did an amazing thing, something that will affect Rancho Cordova long after I'm dead, by putting a youth center, allowing us to have something. And so, I'm more excited about the fact that once the taxes that we have to pay the county because we became a city became available, there's so many things we can do in that area, and there's room to grow. So there's a dead piece of land, there's a old trailer somewhere over in the corner, but I really feel like we're gonna have a basketball court soon. Sorry, that was big. Yeah, they don't need all that parking. There's a basketball court right there somewhere. Went to the downtown breakfast, represented the city, saw a lot of my counterparts, and it's interesting to see besides the fact that we have twice the businesses opening that they do in downtown Sac, like twice. Like they were spotlighting a burger joint and something like that, and I was like, really? Like I can count on a hand probably 15 to 20 businesses that have opened at the same time they've been able to open one. And that's mostly because they don't have the space. But they're dealing with the same thing we are, and I don't know what the community's doing. We're trying our best to deal with the homeless problem, but their homeless problem pales in comparison to ours. And they are sleeping on the streets, and they're just affecting businesses, and they're trying to come up with new ideas. So it's one of those problems that we're all tackling together and trying to figure out how we're going to get through, but it's really affecting the business culture now in the bigger cities. And lastly, my heart from the community goes out to Ken Henderson, who's a vibrant person. He lost his brother last week in a tragic, horrible situation, and so we all grieve with him right now, and we wish him nothing but the best for him and his family.
Very good. Thank you for that report. Well, the highlight of my week definitely was yesterday with the Senate of Praise, having that blessed community, as they said, come together for this partnership with the City of Rancho Cordova, and I'm so proud of our staff. Organizing that to happen on Dr. King's holiday, I thought was just genius, because we have had such a dream as a community hoping for something, some sort of facility like this for our youth, and to have that on Dr. King's day. Obviously, he's associated with Dream as well. Having a dream come true for our kids on his day was just perfect. So I'm really, really excited about it. It might be the most important thing that happens this year in Rancho Cordova. I also attended Cordova Band Boosters event with Mr. McGarvey on Saturday night. The Cordova Band Boosters put on great events. They do 2 a year. It's like there's a crab feed that just occurred, and then I think in September, Bob, there's a steak feed, if I remember right. They are doing a wonderful job, and the kids that perform there, what's unique about their events is the band shows up and performs right in front of you. So you have different elements of the band. You got the whole band, you got the drum section, you got a jazz section, things like that are happening. It's loud, but really enjoyable. So I would strongly encourage you, if you have an opportunity to attend a Cordova Band Boosters event, to do so. At SACOG last week, I ended my year as chair of SACOG, and I was honored to have Ken Cooley show up and sort of present a tribute to me, including one of those gigantic Assembly Senate joint resolution things. But Ken talked about Rancho Cordova and the accomplishments of Rancho Cordova in the context of honoring me for my year as SACOG chair. And I just thought I wanted to share with all of you. There probably is video available somewhere online that Ken made available. You might want to just hear him reflect on what we've accomplished in Rancho Cordova and what our future looks like. It was a very nice tribute by him. I'm extremely appreciative of what he said. January luncheon, I gave an outlook for 2020. Now, I know most of you were drawn away by an ambassador, but that's okay. We still set a record in the room
You did.
for a January
The parking lot was
luncheon.
full.
I came.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, Donald was there. I was looking elsewhere with my.
I was going to go, but you said I was required to go over there.
I gave you a mission, that is true. Go talk to the
Just
ambassador.
so everyone knows, as vice mayor, what you do is you do what the mayor says.
You didn't mention me. I was invited to that luncheon.
Yeah,
And I still.
and you still came to support the city, yeah. That was fun. That
Are
was.
you on tape, David?
I think so, yeah. I'm not certain, though.
That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah, I think someone live streamed it, if I'm not mistaken, but,
We do have it on tape.
okay, very good. Let's see, I've been a speaker at VINS. I spent some time with the RCPD, particularly our new sergeants and their onboarding program, talking about growing strong neighborhoods and giving them some city history. And I think that is my report for the past couple of weeks. Mr. McGarvey.
Yes, I'd like to add a little bit more. Linda talked about the ambassador, and so did Garrett. And before they all showed up, I talked to BJ, the owner of the Coriana Plaza. And he said, you know, something that we will never forget is what the soldiers and the veterans have done in Korea for us. And he has, I'm getting names right now of the Korean veterans, because he has 10 of those peace medals that he wants to give to the veterans.
Wow.
So that's, when that's set up, I will let you know all when it's going to be and where it's going to be. But that's kind of struck me as something that you don't think about, is it how much the people in Korea appreciate what we did during the Korean War.
Very good, thank you, Bob. Mr. City Manager, item number 8, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make my report very brief. Just wanted to highlight, I think the topic of the youth center and how it came about has been mentioned, but I wanted to be sure that the council and the community understands that this dream couldn't have come true if it wasn't for the amazing work of our PAL group, the PAL officers of Officer De La Cruz, Chief Pittman, and the others who played a very key role in making this dream come true. So wanted to be sure. I think Officer De La Cruz was here, but I think he left. But I just wanted to be sure that the council and community is aware that the amazing work they did behind the scenes, and by making the connections and by creating the relationship that we needed to gain the trust of the Center of Praise for this dream to come to reality. Thank you.
Okay, very good. That was our city manager's report. We are moving on to item number 9, consent calendar items. Consent calendar items consist of matters deemed routine and non-controversial by staff. Unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration, all items will be approved by one motion. Are there any items the council wishes to pull between item 9.1 and 9.3?
Seeing none, I move approval of items 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3 with the note that 9.2 is finalizing our agreement with the Center of Praise Ministries.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call, please.
I'm hitting the button. Councilmember McGarvey.
Aye.
Councilmember Budge.
Yes.
Councilmember Terry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gatewood.
Yep.
Mayor Sander.
Aye,
I didn't have a button.
but I don't have a.
It's
Oh,
coming.
there's one.
Okay, I'm looking for a button. I have a button. Okay,
Nope. Nope.
mine worked.
We are
Councilmember
working
Terry.
on an electronic voting system, makes our votes a little more public in terms of who voted for what, and actually presents that graphically in the presentation of a council meeting. This is the second meeting we've attempted this. There are a few little bugs we're still working on. So if you bear with us a moment.
Nothing like a bug or two, you know.
We could write it a letter the way the kids wrote the finish.
Okay, that was item number 9. We are going to move on to item number 10, consent public hearing items. Consent public hearing items consist of matters deemed routine and non-controversial by staff. Unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for individual consideration, all items will be approved by one motion. I'm going to open the public hearing on items 10.1 and 10.2.
Could we pull 10.1, please?
Sure, we can have a discussion on 10.1. Is there a motion to approve item number 7?
Move approval.
I'm sorry, are there any speaker cards at all turned in on these?
No,
two?
there's not.
Okay,
Move the balance of the calendar.
so that's 10.2. Motion made and
9.2 and 3, right? No, 10, I'm sorry.
No,
10.2.
Second, 10.2.
10.2, motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Of course, now you have to split it into two parts.
It is hot. It wasn't hot.
Councilmember McGarvey.
Aye.
Councilmember Budge.
Yes.
Councilmember Terry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gatewood.
Yep.
Mayor Sander.
Aye. That brings us back to, oops, we need to report a result. Okay, that leaves item 10.1 and Linda. do you have a-
Stacy, do you want to read it in?
Montalena Village 7, tentative subdivision map amendment DD 9920, northwest corner of Crescenti Boulevard and Rancho Cordova Parkway.
Opening the public hearing on the item.
Okay, so I simply, and I appreciate the fact that it's a disagreement, but I simply disagreed with the amendment to the street to one part of the amendment to the street layout. And I had a chance to talk to the engineer. However, I have no problem personally, with them changing the dwelling unit type, the product type. However, the street that they are labeling F Street, which is actually Borderlands, okay, which I'm informed is Borderlands. From my perspective, it should remain open to automobiles as well as pedestrians, for the specific reason that in Rancho Cordova, one of the things that we have tried to do our entire time was to get away from the county lotting pattern of forcing everybody to large boulevards and creating huge traffic jams on those large boulevards. We've tried to provide a variety of routes. So if you look at that super block between Douglas and Crescenti, doesn't matter which map you're looking at, but the original plan called for access to Rancho Cordova Parkway at Douglas, at Cobblebrook, I think it's called, at Borderlands or F Street, and at Chrysanthi. The new fire station will be on the north side of Cobblebrook. And, but if that lower street, F Street, is cut off from vehicular traffic, that means everybody on Rancho Cordova Parkway is going all the way down to Chrysanthi and all the way into whatever that interior street is to access that lower part of Village 7, or any part of Village 7, which is what we're discussing right now. And just from my perspective, that street ought to be open. So I don't know if we want to go ahead and discuss it tonight or continue it, or what does anybody else think? Probably nobody but me looked at it. That's okay.
So the nature of the amendment is to close off F Way.
Correct.
So it doesn't look like one of the classic county white barricade, you know, we planned to put a street here, but we never got around to it sort of look. This would just be a solid wall.
No, actually, they proposed to do a pedestrian bridge.
Oh, pedestrian connection only.
There's a drainage channel there. So, because no offense, guys, but it struck me that maybe they were trying to save money in not putting a whole bridge across the drainage channel. But they say that was not their intent, that they simply thought it would prevent cut-through traffic. And my perspective is that cut-through traffic is not a bad thing, and I don't think anybody's going to cut through there anyway. But it's not that it's cut-through traffic, it's simply providing more routes for people to get in and out of their neighborhood, because we know they're not all going to bicycle or walk as much as we would like them to, especially not out to a major thoroughfare like Rancho Cordova Parkway.
What's the impact on the bicycle or pedestrian network with this proposed change?
I have no clue.
Good evening, Mayor Sander and council members. Albert Stricker with the Public Works Department. There were a few background items that directed us into considering this as a bicycle and pedestrian crossing rather than a vehicular crossing. One of those is the proximity between Cobblebrook and Borderlands is less than a quarter-mile spacing. There is a proposed signal at the intersection of Cobblebrook and Rancho Cordova Parkway. And since the intersection of Borderlands is closer than a quarter mile, typically signals don't operate efficiently when they're that close. So therefore, Borderlands is not slated to receive a signal at that location. A non-signalized intersection on a 4-lane street would typically have limited access. So through access would typically not be feasible on a road of this size. It would be limited access to left ends, or there are a couple other configurations that will function.
Sounds like it would be right in, right out.
It would be right in, right out. There are some options for limited lefts, but that limits the other leg. So that is one section of it. The intention was to direct vehicular travelers either to access Cobblebrook from the north if they're southbound, or Chrysanthi if they're northbound, in order to get to the street fronting the park and the apartments. The other, to answer Mayor Sander, your question from a bicycle and pedestrian standpoint, there is a bike path and pedestrian walkway on both sides of Rancho Cordova Parkway. And the intention was to, since this would be limited access already, the consideration was to remove another intersection from that bicycle and pedestrian access and allow a more continuous bicycle and pedestrian access on Rancho Cordova Parkway. And then in addition, east-west through this, the north side of proposed Village 7, accessing the future wetland preserve that has a bicycle and pedestrian trail around the entire perimeter of it, and the park that's on the south side of the preserve. That's some of the background that leaned in this direction. But I'm certainly open to any input from City Council.
So as I read this, pedestrian and bicycle traffic is still accessible from the neighborhood to the trails along Rancho Parkway.
That's correct.
It's just simply perhaps 3 movements out of 4 of vehicular traffic that are being removed.
Correct. If the left leg does not have vehicular access, then you could have a number of configurations for borderlands to the east. It provides more potential options.
Any other council comments on this one?
We should probably hear from the applicant.
Was it the applicant that asked for this? Or
No, it's me.
No. Was the design of this the applicant's idea or our staff's idea? For what she's asking for, where did this design come from?
The proposed bicycle and pedestrian crossing was a collaboration between staff and the applicant.
Would the applicant like to comment on this?
Council members, Mark Hansen with Montelena. I think this is the first time in 15 years we've ever disagreed with Councilmember Budge. But our intent was to try and make a little bit more pedestrian-friendly community. And the reason we love doing business in the city is you have a higher quality vision, and we do too. And so this definitely isn't cost-related. We're agreeing to additional quality amenities like decorative street lights, intersection bulb outs, narrowing down the street sections, separated sidewalks, these pedestrian bridges. It's just all important in what goes into a quality community. And that's what we think this pedestrian access does. Creates a continuous pedestrian Class 1 trail along Rancho Parkway, as Mr. Stricker said. And so we don't see a problem from a traffic perspective, and we just think it creates a more pedestrian-friendly community. And then that's the number one priority. But then I also have to say we're just so far down the path on our tentative map and our improvement plans that any changes now could delay us to achieving our April goal to break ground and do a lot of infrastructure improvements in this neck of the woods. With that in mind, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments on this from members of the public or council members? Okay, I'll close public hearing. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember McGarvey.
Aye.
Councilmember Terry.
Aye.
Councilmember Budge.
I will abstain.
Vice Mayor Gatewood.
Aye.
Mayor Sander.
Aye.
Let's see if it actually works.
Look at that. The new system throws up the abstention.
Did it?
It allowed it. Look at that. Cool.
Thank you all.
I think there's a formatting issue we can work on here.
Okay.
Hit the control minus to zoom it back out.
You're going to see mine. You should have to see them too.
I'm at the top.
Say it's in alpha order, but it's not. No. Yeah, no, it is. It's in alphabetical order, huh?
Okay, we are moving on to item number 11. If the clerk would read that item, please.
Ordinance amending the municipal code and resolutions related to rental housing.
I'm going to open the public hearing. We have a request to continue it to February 3rd. Is that correct, staff?
I will, sorry, you close.
Close the public hearing.
Okay. I will move that we continue the item to February 3rd.
Were there any comments, cards turned in on this item?
No, there's not.
All right. Very good. Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call, please, for continuation.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could you not close the public hearing? That way we won't have to renotice it.
We'll reopen the public hearing
Thank you.
and just leave it open.
Thank you.
Unclosed, yeah.
Can I
Adam, do you want that
can
mentioned
I
in
make
the
a
motion?
parliamentary inquiry? If we're continuing an item, we actually need to take action?
Yes.
Yes. Because you have the right to proceed. You're affirmatively deciding that you don't want to do that business tonight. So we.
You have to vote on that? You can't say without objection?
Once it's on the agenda, we've always taken the position that once it's on this agenda, it's something that belongs to you, not to us.
Do you want me to amend the put that into the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I will move that we continue the item to February 3rd, and the public hearing will remain open.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to keep this item open and move till February 3rd, 2020. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Budge?
Yes.
Councilmember McGarvey?
Yes.
Councilmember Terry?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gatewood?
Aye.
Mayor Sander?
Aye. All right, that concludes our public hearing items. We're moving on to regular calendar items. If the clerk would read the next subject, please.
Technology Initiatives Update.
Very good. Staff report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Kim Duran-Caragiorgio, Administrative Services Director. And I am here this evening with some of my colleagues to provide an update to the council and members of the public on some key technology initiatives that are currently underway here at the city. The intent of this evening's presentation is to demonstrate the progress that has been made on these initiatives and give the council and the public a look at some of the new systems that are being put in place. Many of these systems are replacing city business applications that were put in place in the early years following incorporation and will provide enhanced online service functionality for our citizens, which is a key objective of several of the projects. So this slide provides an overview of the key technology initiatives that are currently underway or will begin in 2020. We will provide a brief overview of each of these projects and also demonstrate some system functionality for our newly launched Civic Clerk system, as well as our upcoming EnerGov system. So we're going to be toggling back and forth between this presentation and some live demonstrations, so please bear with us as we work through that. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stacy Leitner to discuss the first two items on the list.
Okay, so the first item on our list is Civic Clerk, and that is what you are using this evening to vote. So we thank you all very much for your patience and understanding while we all learn a new system. To save time and resources, to be able to improve efficiencies, and for us to be able to gain greater access and the public to city council agendas, videos, improve minutes creation, and be able to maintain storage. City staff has evaluated several different new agenda management software solutions, and we have purchased Civic Clerk. Civic Clerk is a cloud-based software so that you can be able to access it from any web browser where you have an internet connection. The city clerk's office has transitioned to this new system at the end of December of 2019. We transitioned from a system called Sire. The city has completed this implementation of Civic Clerk, which will give staff and the city council and the public increased access to information related specifically to our council meetings. In using Civic Clerk, we are able to accomplish some of the new things, such as we are able to process and see a live council meeting. So as of this evening, you can watch a council meeting live from home or from wherever it is that you might be. And we're going to go through that process this evening so that you can see how to view our live stream. We are using this system to also be able to consolidate and publish an agenda and agenda packet, which is available for the public from our website. And we are also using the system to be able to process and create our minutes. I'm going to turn some time over to Katie, our consultant from Civic Clerk, who is going to demonstrate how you can retrieve an agenda, the minutes, and be able to view a video from the city's website. And then we'll turn some time over to Persephone, and she will walk through the process of how to join an e-notification process that we also have available on our website so that you can receive agenda notifications when we publish. Katie.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, as well as citizens and staff. So we are going to walk through the City of Rancho Cordova's website and how to find agendas, both past and upcoming, as well as view that live stream. Okay. So here we are on the home page of the Rancho Cordova website, and we are just going to go down to our council meeting agendas and minutes. We're going to go ahead and click on that, and that will bring us over to our agendas page. From here, we're able to navigate the council meeting agendas, minutes, and video page, as well as the agendas prior to January 2020. We will be working on getting all of these agendas moved over to Civic Clerk, so they'll all be in one central location. So you'll just have the one link once we get that completed. I'm going to go ahead and click on the agendas, minutes, and video page link. This will bring us to the Civic Clerk portal, where we can see all of our current and upcoming events. You'll also have the ability at the top to search by a keyword or phrase or a time frame if you know what you're looking for. Okay. And at the bottom, you'll see those most recent events. So that's where all of the archived agendas prior to January 2020 will be able to be found. They'll all be in chronological order here. At the top of the current and upcoming events, we can see today's meeting. You can see that by the date. Okay. We can also see that it is currently live, so it is being streamed to the website at this moment. Okay. At the right, you also have the ability to download the PDF version of the agenda and the packet, and the minutes would be here once those are approved by the council at the next meeting.
Click on that and see what you get. No, on the agenda packet. Now show me how to print just one agenda item out of 272 pages, please.
So when you do click on the print, or you can use the bookmark option and find...
Okay, but how do I find that agenda item?
So right here at the top right, there's an option for bookmarks. So when you see here, we have under presentations, we have a few items. So if I clicked on the down arrow, I can see those specific items. Okay. If I go down to the consent calendar that has attachments, again, I would just click on that down arrow.
Okay.
Where I can see those items as well as that attachment.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. My computer has actually made progress from 2 weeks ago, and it was showing me the 272, but I didn't know what a bookmark was, so I didn't
No
know how to
problem.
do that.
Yep, so then from here we can see that this item is page 6, so then you could just come and hit print,
Sure, and
and
tell
then
it
you'd
which
say
pages.
page 6. Yeah.
Got it. Super. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So for this meeting, if we wanted to see the video for this meeting, we can just click right on the meeting title. We're going to get a little pop-up that will have the video available to our left, and that is going to start playing as a live broadcast. Depending on your bandwidth, it may take a minute to load. You can always try pausing and replaying.
Made
Google
progress from 2 weeks ago, and it
there is about a 30-second delay on it.
Look at there.
So we can see that video here as well as the closed captioning. You can make this video larger by expanding. As bookmarks are added, so as these items happen, you're able to click on the items below and it will jump to that portion of the video.
We're going to have to learn to speak more clearly than they do for the closed captioning on TV.
On the right side, we can see a version of the agenda with clickable links to the attachments. As the city clerk saves the motions and votes, those will also be visible here on this item. So I can click on the motion details and see who it was motioned and seconded by, as well as what the action was, as well as the vote results on this item. We also have the PDF version of the agenda if you wanted to view that while you were watching the video. The minutes would be available on this tab once those are published. And then you have the ability to share this. So if you wanted to send it to a friend, you have that option here. And that is navigating the Civic Clerk portal.
And there you are on TV, or you were.
Yes. So excited about that.
I was too, the first time it happened to me, but not so much.
Too funny.
Persephone is our assistant city clerk, and she is going to walk through the process of adding your name and email address to our e-notification process.
Sure I am. All right. There we go. Okay, so again, you're going to begin at the City of Rancho Cordova website, which is cityofranchocordova.org. Up at the top, there's an option to sign up for e-news. You're going to click on that. You're going to scroll about halfway down the page and find the sign up for our e-notifier system, and then you will fill out the information. You also have the choice to select different meetings or activities that are going on that you want to be notified when there's new meetings coming up. You will enter the code above and then hit submit, and this will automatically sign you up to get a notification every time an agenda is published.
Very nice.
Questions? Comments?
Yeah, I'm going to need a lot of practice.
Super.
Okay, so we'll move ahead to the next software on the list, which was OnBase. That is also in the city clerk's office. So with additional recent upgrades in technology, the city is transitioning our repository, which is our holding place for city records. The city purchased the OnBase system to also replace Sire and to serve as the city's repository. Sire currently holds many of the records for the city clerk's office as well as the finance department. OnBase is a more robust cloud-based software with better features to be able to manage our city records, and the new system will be able to do some of the following. Allow the city to have more access to records and just be more accessible. Be more secure to protect our city records. Improve city staff's response time to subpoenas and public records requests, and be able to minimize duplicate records in multiple systems. So where are we on this project so far? City clerk and finance office is fully configured with regards to our data. Each department has been given one training in OnBase, and we will be receiving another training in February. All records in Sire for the city clerk's office have been moved over to OnBase. And where are we going from here? Over the rest of January and early February at the latest, we anticipate that all of the records in finance that are currently in Sire will be moved over. Staff will then create procedures to create new processes for uploading and retrieving records that will be more routine for staff. The city clerk's office will invite additional departments to start utilizing the system. And over time, we anticipate adding some more capabilities such as workflow into the system. Our end goal in all of this is to be able to seek adoption by council for OnBase to be the city's repository so that we can have a trusted system in conformance with the state of California's recommendations, which would allow us to be able to reduce paper and hard copies that we currently store. Any questions?
It's not something that's necessarily visible to the city council, but is definitely something that, or to the public, but is definitely a system that we use at City Hall among staff each day.
Very important improvement.
Okay. Kim.
So moving on down the list, the next item is our financial system, our enterprise resource planning system. We have gone through an RFP process and are in discussions with 2 finalists, and do anticipate that an award of contract will be brought forth to the council in the next 2 months with a plan of beginning implementation this summer. So we're excited about that. The next item on the list is something a name you're probably familiar with, OpenGov, which has been a leader in sort of the financial transparency platform. In recent years, they have built out a more robust budget system, and so we have recently entered into a contract with OpenGov with the intent of using that system for the development of our fiscal year 2021 to 23 budget. And my goal is that we will be able to have the tools necessary to have a completely electronic budget for this next go-round. And then finally, the last item on the list is the EnerGov land management system. This has been quite a work effort amongst many staff in the organization. This encompasses more people in the organization than any other of these projects. We are excited for the upcoming go-live of Phase 1 on March 2nd, which will include all of our licensing functions here at the city. So business license, animal license, and rental housing license will all be able to be applied for and paid for online beginning March 2nd. And then Phase 2 will consist of our land management code enforcement permitting, is slated to go live in early 2021. So the next thing we want to do is give you a sneak peek of the new citizen service self-service portal with the EnerGov system. This will be the landing page for many of our customers who are coming to the city to either apply for a business license or renew a business license. And eventually, this portal will be expanded to include building permits and all other functions. So with that, I'm going to ask Jessica Crone, who you may know from our Neighborhood Services Department. She is currently on a special project assignment to work on the EnerGov implementation and has been very much responsible for helping build out this portal. I'm going to ask her to walk you through what a new business license application will look like in the new system.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I am excited to show you our new citizen self-service portal. This is where customers can go online to purchase their business licenses. And tonight, I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is to apply for a home-based business license.
Jessica, is that actually part of the city's website or something separate?
So right now, it is a separate site. We'll have our main city page with links to this customer portal. So this is your first view at the customer portal. And that has our city picture in the background there as well. So we're logged in as Joe Citizen. So that is the user profile we're going to demonstrate with tonight.
Couldn't have been a Jane.
Maybe next time for the next demo. So this site will show you the most trending licenses that have been applied for, but tonight we're looking for home base, so we can use our application assistant. And as we walk through this, because we're a new customer, we can create our business during the application process. So we will select what type of business it is. And we're going to specify the location of where the business is at. So here the customer can either enter it manually, or we are using our GIS system to locate properties in Rancho Cordova. So you can see we have some options.
Wow.
We'll go ahead and use our Prospect Park Drive address. And if there was a suite number in particular, we could specify that as well. We're going to hit the next button. And as we're walking through this, we can see where we're at in the application process by these numbers that are at the top letting us know what stage we're in. So tonight we'll say it's Joe's Home Business. And we will say that Joe has online sales of retail items. If they had a DBA, they could go ahead and enter that information. We'll specify that this is for residential. They can put their industry classification, or also known as NACE code.
Yeah.
And we'll select the one that fits.
Can you ignore that if you don't have any clue what that is?
Yes, this is an optional field, so it is not mandatory. And I'd also like to point out that any point in time while the customer is applying, if they needed to walk away from the computer for any reason, they could hit the Save Draft button. They could save it and come back to it later. We'll give a description of what type of activity we're doing. We're asking them to please provide a 24-hour emergency contact and the primary owner as well. Now they can either search for a contact or they can preload their favorites. There's your Jane. So we can go ahead and pre-select a favorite contact.
We actually know Jane Smith.
Yeah, we do. We'll tell Jane. So can both contacts be the same person?
They can if you like, yes.
Okay.
So we've added our contacts. And if they had some tax identification number, we'd enter that. Perhaps they have a website they want to put on file. And they can specify the number of customers that come to the business. Since we're doing online sales, we'll say 0. If they had any state licensing, they could add that. We ask them to verify that at least one business owner resides at the residence. And we have no commercial vehicles. We ask them where they...
Okay, so before you get beyond the,
yes.
The state or special licensing section, at what point does it get verified that they are being truthful, that they don't need a state license of some sort?
We have on our back office where staff goes in and verifies the application. So a staff member will be verifying this information and taking a look at the application before issuing the license.
Okay, so the end of this process is not just going to be an automatic issuance. Somebody has to verify it before it's actually issued.
Right, at this point, they'll be able to apply, pay for it, staff will review it, and then give the final approval.
Super. Thank you.
If I might just interject, I do want to clarify one thing, that we do not, that is an optional field. We do not require them to provide a state contractor license number. That is optional. So it is not part, that review is not part of, we do review it if they provide it, but it's not a mandatory part of the business license.
Okay, then let me ask the question the other way around. Jane Smith doesn't want to sell shoes of multicolors, but she wants to provide daycare. So, but she has to have state permission to do that, and state regulation and state licensing. So does the same process still apply, though? Somebody at the end will be verifying that they have their license or whatever they need, even though they didn't put it on screen.
So our city business license does not go through that verification. That for somebody in that instance with the daycare, they go through the state process. That is not part of our business license application process. Ours is focused on the zoning component, and that is it.
Okay, so you could also use this to apply for a restaurant online.
Correct.
And at what point would at what point would that, I mean, obviously you assume the person is going to say that they have beer and wine for on-site consumption and they need a type 21 license. And so at what point does somebody verify that or they have to disclose that?
I'm gonna have Lisa answer
Yeah.
that question for you.
If I can. What do I push? Is all good? Okay. Council, Mayor, Lisa Barron's Finance Department. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that we run into very often is the business license is one of the first things that people are coming in to get. They need it to be able to open their bank account. They need it to be able to do their DBAs. And so often they don't have all those ducks in a row at the time that they're getting a license. We do try to help assist them and talk to them about what other regulatory agencies they probably need to visit. But many of those things will happen after the fact of us already issuing the business license. And we do explain to them that this does not preclude them from having to obtain those authorizations from all of the other entities, whichever ones they may be. So if they do provide I do want to say that there is a level of care that if we know something requires a state license, we're probably going to at least look at it or ask. I mean, I think an excellent example is the massage establishments. By all means, we are looking at those and if making sure that they have a license. If they provide us with a contractor's license, we do go and look and make sure that it's active. But that is not a requirement per our ordinance for them to obtain a license.
Okay, and I do understand that. I probably maintain a concern about that, and I've talked about that or asked questions about that under different settings, simply because in my experience, having sat as an approval authority in the county, you always want to make sure that if you grant somebody permission to do something, that they are actually able to go out and do that, and that they've presented an accurate picture to you so that you're not technically giving them permission to do something that they don't yet have the right to do. So that's the process that I see, the problem that I see with this particular process.
Right.
We don't want to tell them they can hang out a sign and start taking in 6 kids until the state has told them to do that.
And
I mean, it's unlikely that they would be able to open a restaurant without, but something, like you said, massage parlor. You set up a table, you hang out a sign, you put it on the internet, you put it on Craigslist, and people show up at the door, and we've given you a business license to do that, but you didn't really have permission to do that.
And I hear your concerns, and I do know that there is obviously observations made out, whether it be our code enforcement officers or staff, as businesses are coming in. We go in with the assumption that they are honest and are looking to start a business that is going to thrive here in our neighborhood. Should they choose to not follow all of those conditions, it will bubble up, and we will then take action through our code enforcement department and whatever else means that we need to take. So, but unfortunately, I will tell you, they come running in here and the first thing they want is that business license because that's what lets them get their bank account.
I understand. I see that there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Just harder to get somebody out of business once we've told them they can go into business.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, we can specify where any equipment's being stored or materials. We ask them to acknowledge that everything is correct. They have the opportunity to review the business restrictions and zoning code, and we're asking them also to verify that they are aware of them and that they'll be in compliance. If there were any attachments for the business to support their activities, they could upload that here. However, it's not required. We're going to have them declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. And they can either use their mouse to sign, or they can go ahead and type in for ADA compliance. They have the opportunity to review everything before they actually submit it. So they can see all of the information they've supplied us with, the cost for the license, and we hit the submit button. All right, it's told us that the application has been created successfully and that once the fees are paid, we'll review it. So we're going to go ahead and add this to our shopping cart. Now, if they needed to purchase more than one license at a time for whatever reason, they could load all those up into the shopping cart at once and then pay for them at the end. That way they don't have to apply and come back repeatedly. So we see how much we're going to pay here. We're going to go ahead and check out. Okay, so we have successfully paid for this, and we could continue back to the site.
I'll have to remember that credit card number.
It might be maxed
4, 5,
out,
6,
so be
7, 8,
careful.
9,
No.
yeah.
4571.
So the customer has the ability to go to their dashboard, so they could see all of the items that they have submitted and their status. So we could view the licenses, and we can see that right now, the home-based business license that we just applied for has been submitted online. It has the applied date, and there's no expiration date just yet because staff will review it. And at this point, we have successfully submitted our first home-based business license.
Cool.
Okie dokie.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Any questions about our upcoming go live of our EnerGov system on March 2nd?
No, that's cool.
All right.
So in closing, I'd like to just acknowledge the hard work and dedication of staff from across the entire organization that are working on the variety of projects that you heard about this evening. These system implementations are a very heavy lift for the organization, and it takes a lot of hours from people in addition to their day-to-day duties. But I think, as you're seeing, we're making progress, and the end is coming in sight. So with that, if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just wanted, Kim, could you also say a few words about the next phases of the EnerGov with the building permits and code enforcement module?
Yep. So as I noted earlier, so phase 1 of the go live on March 2nd is strictly the licensing component, so business license, animal license, and rental housing license. Phase 2, which is everything else, including code enforcement and building permits, planning, and so on, is currently scheduled to go live about early 2021.
All right. Do we have any cards turned in on this item?
We do not.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Very exciting update. We're going to move on to item number 12.2 and talk about speed zones, speed limits in school zones. What looks like a quick report.
4 people?
We have a PowerPoint.
Oh, we're going to 15.
Good evening, Mayor Sander and members of the council. Albert Stricker with the Public Works Department. And City Council had requested that staff evaluate options for school zone speed limits. And our team has evaluated those options and is prepared to provide a presentation to City Council. So I will turn it over to our team.
Good evening, Mayor Sander and council members. My name is Byron Tang from Public Works, and I'm here to present about school speed zone limits and our evaluation. Introduction. In the summer of 2019, the city of Sacramento decided to reduce school zone speed limits from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. Rancho Cordova City Council asked city staff to evaluate the feasibility of applying that same reduction to Rancho Cordova. Quickly, the topics that we will be talking about. First, we're going to go over background information and discuss where we are now. Then we will talk about research findings, what we found about the law, and our collision analysis. Then we'll talk about the challenges that we identified leading up to our recommendation. And then we will provide a staff recommendation and receive council input along with questions. So where we are, city staff have reached out to the city of Sacramento to learn more about their program and their feedback. The total implementation cost for the city of Sacramento was $400,000. This includes labor, studies, signage, relocation of signs, and inventorying. The enforcement started in October of last year. For Rancho Cordova, city staff analyzed collisions within a 5-year time period. The city of Sacramento is still evaluating the effectiveness of their program. Now about our research findings. In order for a speed limit to be reduced on a street, there are some restrictions to the roads and these roads that are to be reduced have to meet certain requirements. AB 321 passed by the state of California in 2007 allows this speed reduction within 500 feet of a school zone. The reduction can be applied when a street meets these following requirements. Completion of an engineering and traffic survey. The street must have a maximum of 2 through traffic lanes only. When there is a maximum posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour immediately prior to the school zone, which that means 35 miles per hour would not qualify. When the appropriate signage is installed, and when the roadway is residential in nature. In addition, AB 321 allows for a 25 mile per hour extended speed limit within 1,000 feet from a school building. This is mainly for transition zones, so you can transition to the 15 mile per hour or 20 mile per hour speed limit.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Sheldorf, Assistant Chief of the Police. So in part, we worked with Public Works in analyzing the feasibility of this. And my role of it is to take a look at 5 years worth of collision study or collision data to evaluate whether the program would even be effective based on what the costs are within the community. We used the collision data from 2013 to 2017, 5-year time span. And with that, we pulled all of the collisions that occurred within what the law allows, where we could implement this program, and determined that in that 5-year program, 5-year period, we only had 5 collisions total in all 23 schools that this could affect, and out of those where speed was a factor, and out of those collisions, only 1 was an injury, and in looking deeper into that injury was just a minor complaint and pain. So when you look at whether using the data specific on whether it would be effective, we feel like the data doesn't support that the costs that the city would to implement the program would be effective based on the data alone. So again, it's a very minute amount of crashes where speed was a factor. And when you balance that with the costs and whether I would be able to enforce that particular speed limit in those particular areas to begin with, that's how we came to our conclusion. So I'll turn it back over to Byron.
Now moving on to the challenges and recommendation part of the presentation. Some of the additional challenges that we found is in order to reduce these speed limits, extensive studies would be required, just like in City of Sacramento, that would incur costs. And we came up with a cost estimate of $70,000 for implementation. So this includes studies, signs, and labor, so city staff. In addition, we looked at latest research, and latest research is not clear if collisions will be reduced just by lowering speed limits alone.
So, and to follow up on the collision data conversation, in order for me to evaluate whether this would be feasible, I would like to see, the City of Sacramento has implemented it since October. They're going to evaluate it at some point, but for me, I would like to see what their effectiveness it would be from their standpoint before we commit any money or any enforcement actions forward. Again, that doesn't mean that we can't address it later on. If the City of Sacramento has some successes, we would certainly take a look at it again and keep it open for discussion. But I feel like we should be data-driven, and the effectiveness should be based on the data alone. And that's currently where I sit. On a side note, my staff in enforcing it has limited time in enforcing speed. And when I'm looking at how I'm going to deploy my resources out in the city, I would rather deploy my resources where we have higher speed issues, such as Coloma, Folsom, Sunrise, where if a collision does in fact occur, it's going to either be a serious injury or a fatality. So when you deploy the resources, I'm looking at, do I want to write a citation for 25 miles an hour in a 15, or do I want to write one for 75 and a 40? A 75 mile an hour collision is going to be much more dangerous than the lower speed ones. So when you're looking at how you're going to spend your money and how you're going to deploy your resources, the data doesn't support where we're sitting for this particular program.
All right. Well, I very much appreciate sort of the research-based response here. Are there council questions?
Yeah,
Well,
Linda?
Go ahead, Linda.
Not
This was your
questions
item.
particularly, but I just want to share my perspective and the reason that I had personally asked that this be discussed. And I would note as a side note that in this last grapevine, there also is an article about you all developing Safe Routes to Schools master plan. And it seems to me that it's all fine and dandy to develop a master plan that talks about walking and bicycling to school, but if we're not encouraging people to slow down too, then we might have left out an important part of it. But that's just my personal opinion. So the reason I specifically asked that you evaluate this once the City of Sacramento brought it up and actually did something about it. My parents were transferred to Tucson in 1967, and the City of Tucson has been doing this for decades, and they continue to do it today. Tucson is a city that has essentially been bypassed by freeways. Highway 10 rims the area. It comes in from Phoenix, it goes out to El Paso. There is absolutely no crosstown freeway in Tucson at all, and it's all major thoroughfares, basically 4 and 6 lanes. And even with schools that are on those major thoroughfares, it is quite clearly posted that 15 miles an hour when school is in session, people truly slow down to 15 miles an hour. And as you point out, Jeff, there is enforcement. I totally appreciate your comments about speed and people not really speeding on the local roads. So let's talk about 2 specific locations. First of all, Cordova Lane School. Both Zinfandel and Cordova Lane are two-lane streets. I don't know what the speed limit is, but in terms of the two-lane streets, they would qualify. Even though they are not active year-round elementary or not active elementary, they still have a lot of kids, preschoolers, parents, whatnot. And then, of course, the Little League is there. The other example that comes to my mind immediately is Navigator, because it is well known that the people who are speeding on Bear Hollow in the mornings are the moms who are rushing to get their kids to school on time, which is very odd. Get your kid to school on time so you don't have to speed. It's a two-lane road. The speed limit is 30. It qualifies. And add to that the fact that the military department is building an absolutely enormous building over there that is going to bring a lot of people, a lot of traffic, who may very well use Famoyer or Mather Boulevard, but they're also going to be using Bear Hollow to get to and from work in the morning and in the afternoon. And so the traffic volume on Bear Hollow is going to go up dramatically. It's probably a 50-foot thoroughfare, and another 2 lanes could be added or whatever. And I know that you all will watch it. But currently, we have that problem because people taking their kids to school do speed. So I appreciate the research into the costs. I appreciate the fact that there probably has not been enough time passed to evaluate the effectiveness of the program in the city of Sacramento. I'm probably okay with not doing anything about it today, but I would appreciate it if we kept an eye on it and kept it in the back of our minds, and definitely add something to the Safe Routes to Schools master plan that discusses this as a potential option.
Yeah, I mean, all along, as you know, we certainly are sympathetic to the speeds. We get complaints quite often, and as they come in, we do deploy our resources there, and we certainly keep an eye on certain trends and that sort of thing. So I'm aware of these areas, and we do deploy our resources when need be. We were just asked to look at this specific instance on whether the qualifying schools, and we can certainly address at the request of the council to take a look at specific areas, but I'm very open to any discussion about how we deploy our resources, and we do very often go out and deal with school areas and school
I guess
zones.
the only thing I would say generically in terms of deploying resources, I find it frustrating when the police is driving down the road and somebody is clearly speeding or running a red light or doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and it's ignored. So.
Yeah, of course, I can't speak to any specific instance,
no,
but
me
we
neither.
can't
I
make the
understand.
assumption that they're not going to a call. So, I mean, the perception is that they're ignoring it, but I would be willing to bet more often than not, and I'd be surprised to hear if any of our officers are in fact doing that without having to go somewhere else.
I understand. Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
David.
Mr. Terry.
I appreciate this. I know, Albert, you and I have had extensive conversations about Cades Cove and kind of that area of Anatolia, and would this be an appropriate way? A lot of the neighbors there were asking for exactly the same thing, and it isn't necessarily that they were speeding. It was just a lot of cars going by at one time. My observation as a former school board member and even as a parent of an elementary school children at a very, very busy elementary school at one point. Now it's 2 schools in that neighborhood, but when it wasn't, the bigger concern is stuff further away from school, not the stuff most people, and I will say that, I've walked from my son's school and seen, somebody blow a stop sign because they were staring at their phone And so you're going to have like a sign isn't necessarily going to stop some of the really bonehead things that are going to happen in front of a school anyways. But the kinds of traffic mitigation work that we've done, like in front of Abraham Lincoln, or I'm sorry, AM Wynn and some other schools, to go in and address after the fact where we know we're starting to have problems, I think is a much more effective thing than to come in. I get the idea of what this is, but my experience is, Rosemont High is a great example. Most injuries that I heard of kids getting hit by cars were kids crossing streets where they shouldn't have been, and it wasn't in front of school where there are, school staff out there watching them. So right in front of Cordova High, where we had that corner that we just, improved so that kids have a better place to stand and wait. But it's not usually that corner. It's the block down when they get closer to Folsom Boulevard where nobody's watching them, where, bad decisions are made by drivers and by kids. So to me, I think this is, it's interesting to look at what you study, but yeah, from my experience, a lot of it really comes down to, do we have adequate sidewalks and barriers to keep, cars on the street and away from students and pedestrians in general? And again, where we've done, I think some of our best work of this kind of stuff have been to kind of go in after the fact, knowing what our problem areas are and working with school site staff to say, this crosswalk over here has been a problem, or this corner over here has been a problem. And what is the solution that's right for that area? I know one school in particular that I sent Albert and Cyrus some pictures of was, a street that dead ends right into the multipurpose room of one of our elementary schools from a straight street that dead ends into the school. It's not a very long street, but Cyrus and I had a good conversation about it, that maybe it's something that we might want to look at some physical barriers that would keep a car, if it, just kept rolling, that it didn't roll and hit a building. So again, where we find those problems, one, we shouldn't design bad designs like that, but then again, we weren't here in the 60s when they did some of this stuff. But where we can do it, I think that to me seems a lot more effective. And when you're talking about safe routes to schools, that's when you can identify the different issues and problems. I know when I was on the school board, we had a big issue at AM Wynn with the easement in the back of the field there, where the neighbor was really frustrated with what it was. But that, and she wanted the school district to abandon it so she could take it over as part of her yard, and nobody could ever go through there again.
We're still hearing about that one.
Yeah, but on the flip side, that easement and that exit, one, saves a lot of walking time for students and for parents, and gives a very safe entrance and exit into that neighborhood, instead of going back out onto the busier street or onto Lincoln Village, where we know we've had tons of design problems with Lincoln Village. So again, I think each school and each issue has its own solution, and unfortunately, when you paint with a broad brush, you're really just not going to get the kind of effectiveness that we're getting by working with Albert's staff. So, thanks.
And I can tell you, if I can interject, I can tell you that and ensure the council that I think, and I'm very proud of the relationship that the police department has with Public Works now, that when we do in fact are out in the field and we see a particular situation like you talked about, we have an outstanding working relationship with not only the enforcement side but the engineering side, and we work very closely to overcome some of those problems. So.
And just two really quick anecdotes. When I was on the school board, a student was hit and killed in front of, I believe it was West Campus. And it's interesting because they had been collecting signatures to get a signal light at that crossing for, I want to say, 3 years prior to that student being killed. It took another 18 months before they installed the signal, and they actually had a memorial service and unveiling and everything at the city. And I remember I don't think I was even on the school board by the time that it happened. Compare that to this. I remember walking home one day and my son's principal stopped me and mentioned how busy it was on one of our streets, and it would be really great if we had no parking signs along one side of the street in case emergency vehicles needed to come down that street. So Albert worked with the safety officer at Elk Grove Unified and a handful of other folks to have a meeting here. The principal came. I was at that. It was the very first meeting that we ever have. I haven't been back since. But the principal kind of voiced his concern. I want to say within a matter of weeks, those signs went up. And the principal and everybody else were just amazed at that. You didn't see that happen in Elk Grove. You don't see that happen in Sac City Unified. You don't see that happen in the county. And they were just amazed at the swiftness of we've got this idea. It would be a lot safer if we had those signs. And I mean, I don't even think there was another city council meeting before those signs were up. So the responsiveness when our local educational leaders say this is what we need, our city delivers and Albert's team delivers. So we're doing a really good job on that side.
All right. Very good discussion. I know all of us are in favor of, as much safety for our kids and around school sites as possible. But I appreciate sort of keeping an eye on this and anything else, frankly, that comes along that can enhance, the safety of our kids.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mayor Sander, I have a speaker card for this
Oh,
item.
we do. Very good. Let's hear the speaker card.
Daryl Langwell.
Yeah.
Welcome, Daryl.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Darrell Langwell, Vineyards Neighborhood. Listening to Assistant Chief Sheldorf's talking about speed-related accidents tells me that the people are not paying attention to the sign that's there right now. Changing the number on the sign will not change the person's activity. On my way here tonight, at the corner of Becklin and Airman, I saw a car come through at 30, 35 miles an hour, never even slowed down for the stop sign. The signs aren't going to make a difference. It's the people that are going to make the difference. And the people that are going to speed are going to speed. The people that are going to obey the law are going to obey the law. And just putting a different number on a sign is not going to alter their behavior. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we are going to move on to item number 12.3, Community Enhancement Fund Update.
Thank you, guys.
Staff presentation.
So thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Stacy Delaney, the Community Enhancement Analyst for the city, and with me tonight is Daniel Leonardich, who also supports the Community Enhancement Fund and has been a really valuable member of the city team. As you know, the Community Enhancement Fund is one of those unique overall projects that touch about every department in the city and all areas of the city when we look at it geographically. And although there are two of us sitting up here tonight, it's certainly not a two-person project team. We have a whole staff supporting us, from finance to communications to just about every other department within the city. And it not only takes those dedicated staff members to bring these projects to fruition, but it also takes willing participants in the community, whether those are our nonprofit partners, our schools, and community-based projects that come forth. So I just want to make sure that we're aware that this isn't just a two-person team. It's really the whole city and the effort behind it. And I also want to thank council for your support and vision, and also the community support, because they're the ones that trusted us from the beginning to bring these projects forward and to support the add-on sales tax. So tonight, we're going to provide you with an overview of the Community Enhancement Fund. I'm going to briefly go over the next application cycle. Daniel's going to go over the Measure H Community Enhancement Fund Citizen Oversight Board, and that will be followed by a project update, and then we're going to end with a Legacy Fund project discussion. It seems hard to believe, but back in November 2014 was when Rancho Cordova voters approved Measure H, which is the half-cent local add-on sales tax that we now commonly refer to as the Community Enhancement Fund. The sales tax went into effect on April 1st of 2015, and the city began receiving the new funds in June of that year. So this June will be the 5-year anniversary of the Community Enhancement Fund. The chart on the screen depicts the past 8 years of general fund revenues for the city. The green shaded area represents the Community Enhancement Fund revenues that began during the 2014-15 fiscal year, and during the most recent full year, 2018-19, the program generated approximately $8.7 million in additional sales tax revenues. This fiscal year, we anticipate receiving approximately $8.8 million. This is higher than the previous sales tax projections for the fiscal year. Later tonight, we'll have an opportunity to talk about the additional anticipated revenues as part of the Legacy Fund discussion and the project updates. And as of December 31st of 2019, we have already received approximately $3 million of the anticipated 8.8. And based upon the most recent sales tax projections, the early indications are that the revenue in fiscal year 2021 will be approximately 8.8 million again, and we anticipate a slight uptick in fiscal year 21-22, with it being approximately 8.9 million. The Community Enhancement Fund provides locally controlled funds for local priorities that are important to Rancho Cordova. These key community priority areas include public safety and public works, legacy projects, community-based and grassroots programs, as well as other initiatives. The pie chart on the screen represents the breakdown of these community priority areas by percentages, and you'll notice, for instance, Legacy Fund, approximately 26% of the overall fund went towards future legacy projects. When we look at this current year's allocation compared to the prior years, it's very consistent with what we've done in the past. The largest difference can be seen in the Legacy Fund. The prior year, the Legacy Fund was about 33%, and as you can see, this current fiscal year, it's 26%. However, when you look at all the other categories, they are basically within 1% of what we've allocated in the past. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Daniel, and he's going to go over some Community Enhancement Fund Citizen Oversight Board.
Good evening, Council and staff and guests. So again, this is Daniel Leonardich, Management Technician for the Community Enhancement Fund. So although it's not required by the ballot language, Council has expressed some desire that the city create a Community Enhancement Fund Oversight Board. The original board started in 2018. It's composed of 7 residents, 2 of which are students, one being a high school student and the other a Promise Program recipient. They provide an extra layer of oversight to monitor the Community Enhancement Fund and provide feedback and recommendations to city staff. The pictures here each have 6 people in them, but there are, like I said, indeed 7. Now, all prior meeting materials and minutes of the Oversight Board can be accessed from the Community Enhancement Fund button or by going to the City Clerk's page from the city's website. I believe we have 2 board members here with us tonight, Nika Gauf and Trish Medina, if you guys want to stand up. Oh, and Lee, sorry, I missed you, Lee, sitting in the back. Thank you all. One of the Oversight Board tasks was to provide feedback about accomplishments to be highlighted in the annual Citizens Report. Their important feedback helped shape the report that was unveiled at the annual State of the City and mailed to residents in November. I'm sure you all recognize the beautiful report here. So the Oversight Board also confirmed revenues received in the prior fiscal year in comparison to the budget, actual expenditures to ensure that they were in alignment with the grant awards and budget allocation approved by the City Council, and reviewed each grantee's compliance with the city's reporting requirements. In addition to the annual report and the work of the Oversight Board, the city provides an open data tool that can be searched by category, subcategory, fiscal year, project, status, and through an interactive map. This tool, their open data tool, is available on the city's website under the Community Enhancement Fund button section.
So our next application cycle is starting very soon. It's right around the corner. And new this year will be the establishment of an informal arts stakeholders group. When the Arts Strategic Plan was adopted by Council in December of 2019, one of the short-term goals that were established was to actually form an informal arts stakeholders advisory group, which would assist with the visual arts grants process. So we have begun reaching out to form this initial group with the goal of having the individuals identified this month. It's also anticipated that they will meet a few times over the next couple of months and assist with developing guidance for the visual arts grant process and assist with the call for future proposals. We also anticipate that they will provide their recommendation to city staff for both the current fiscal year, where you've already set aside $50,000 for public art, as well as the fiscal year 2021 grant application cycle. What will be different about this 2021 grant application cycle is that when they do the call for proposals, we're anticipating that they may stipulate something such as, this is a desired medium that we're looking for in the art. They might stipulate a specific location or a targeted area, or maybe a general theme or something of that nature. Some of the more robust arts-related initiatives will require an arts coordinator, but we do see the formation of this group happening very soon. The proposed timeline for the next grant application cycle is on the screen. The application cycle is opening approximately 1 week earlier and also closing 1 week later. This is being done to provide a more robust review period so our education-related partners can review all applications prior to giving an endorsement or withholding their endorsement. And it will also allow some additional time for the Arts Stakeholders Advisory Group to meet and to assist with that call for proposals. Even though we're changing the start and stop time slightly, it doesn't actually change when you'll be making budget decisions, when we anticipate the resolution to be adopted, or when funding becomes available. Next, we're going to go over a financial update for the Community Enhancement Fund. Since the inception of the Community Enhancement Fund, the city has collected revenues totaling approximately $33 million, and we have expended approximately $23 million, and that was through June 30th of 2019. Some projects and programs take more than one fiscal year to complete. So there's some instances in which a project may be started one fiscal year, but it doesn't actually complete until the following fiscal year. So this item on the screen actually is a depiction of those funding categories that have been established by council and what was adopted in fiscal year 1920. This is the same information that was presented just in a percentage format earlier, but here you can see the actual dollars assigned in fiscal year 1920. You'll notice on the bottom that we had approved projects for $8.2 million, and as I indicated earlier, we're anticipating revenues to be higher at approximately $8.8 million this fiscal year. We're going to go ahead and transition to a project update, and then we will move on to legacy projects. So although we're only going to discuss one community-based project tonight, there's actually more than 50 projects each year that make up the community grants within the Community Enhancement Fund. We do provide updates for about 5 months in the form of check presentations to give you and the public information about those various projects. And the vast majority of the 50 or so projects each year start generally between the July and October timeframe, and then they typically end the following June. Sometimes a project such as the Lincoln Village Gateway sign takes a little longer, and that's especially true when we're talking about construction-related projects. The Lincoln Village Community Sign Project was actually funded in fiscal year 18-19, and the sign has been designed with input from the community. It will be installed at Vanguard and Routier, and the monument location is listed where the blue dot is on the screen. The city has gone out to bid multiple times to find a contractor at a reasonable price for this project. The latest round of bids produced 2 responses. The lowest bid came in at $39,000. And in order to move forward with this project, council will need to approve additional funding, approximately $30,000 more than what you have previously allocated towards this project. If approved, manufacturing of the pieces will take approximately 8 weeks, and the sign could be installed by June 30th of this year. There's a rendering of the sign here on the screen. And just to refresh everyone's memory, this is a sign that was actually requested by residents in Lincoln Village. They helped design the sign. For them, it was a dream to have a monument that would announce when you're in the Lincoln Village neighborhood so that people would know you're here in Rancho Cordova and welcome to their neighborhood. Council did approve $20,000 towards the design and build of the sign, and like I mentioned, we will need an additional $30,000 to actually construct this and install the neighborhood sign. With a motion.
And our estimate was $9,000?
The estimate to originally design and build was $20,000, and then
Oh,
based
it's all right,
upon,
okay.
and
Just
then
to do
based
it.
upon every estimate thereafter to actually bid out the project, it was much higher.
Can probably save a little money by not putting the Community Enhancement Fund logo on there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's needed.
Might save $20.
I guess you could approve, $29,980. So I am looking for your feedback on this, and if you would like to make a motion to approve the $30,000 more needed to complete this project, we are ready to move forward with it this spring.
This is an action item in that sense? Or do you just wish us to express our opinion?
It's within the city manager's.
So has anybody done value engineering on this?
Yes, I think I know our public works department has been involved, very involved in this. So I don't think, my thought is that a formal, Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong, a formal roll call is not needed. We just need to proceed with the allocation of the
That's my
funds
reading of our
and
agenda
get the
as well.
direction from the council.
I think what you're looking for perhaps then is an objection, which I'm
No,
not
if
seeing.
If you're asking for vote concerning money, you should take a roll call.
Would be prudent if the council gives us clear direction whether we want to spend the funds or not.
Okay,
Do you want a motion?
yes.
All right. I move approval. I actually kind of agree with David. I mean, I know this is silly, but not to nitpick about it, but I would remove the community enhancement thing, and I would put the logo right in the middle of the more intense series of dots and balance it out for a design perspective.
Yep.
That's fine. But that's not what he's asking for.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and
Any
seconded,
chance for Linda Budge to weigh in on design?
including design.
I'm
It's
just-
pretty funny. Roll call,
Even when
please.
we're trying to
Brought it
pay for
up.
something.
He brought it up.
Roll
I did
call,
not
please.
invent this.
we just saved by that design?
Councilmember Terry,
At least $20.
Councilmember Budge,
$10.
No, you gotta vote.
Yes.
Councilmember McGarvey,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gatewood,
Yep.
Mayor Sander.
Aye.
Actually, I think that one of the things that's going to be worth the 30,000 is the people in Lincoln Village. When we've gotten people like Lorianne and others have gotten in there, they've ended up with movies in the park. They have Christmas parade. They've got a lot more pride in themselves. And I think this would be something else that shows what's changed in Lincoln Village. And I think it's something that we need. So I'm only all for that.
All right. So we're moving on to legacy projects.
Yes, I'm just waiting for the screen to catch back up. So the Community Enhancement Fund provides funding for large-scale community projects through an annual legacy fund allocation. And legacy fund projects typically cross multiple fiscal years. And we're going to go and look at each of the approved legacy fund projects and one new project that's anticipated to receive future funding. So we're going to start off by looking at 3 projects: the community pool project, the softball modernization, and the civic center. The softball project is a new 7-field softball complex at Mills Middle School, and for decades that's also been home to Cordova girls softball. This project is done in partnership with Folsom Cordova Unified School District. The overall construction cost of the project is approximately $8 million, and the city has allocated up to $3 million towards that project. And the first season at the new complex begins this March. So in just 2 short months, we will have people playing at the new softball complex. The next project is going to be the community pool project.
Hold on a sec.
Cordova Park and Rec District is one of my clients, so I'm going to excuse myself at this time.
Are you asking for more money?
No,
Okay.
just informational.
Keep my eyes down so you can't see more. Hey, if I can sit in the room for an air show, you can.
So the city has committed $3 million from the Community Enhancement Fund towards the community pool improvement project at Hagan Community Park. We've also dedicated $400,000 from park renovation fees towards this project. This pool project is in partnership with Cordova Recreation and Park District, and the total project cost is estimated to be approximately $9 million. CRPD has designed and will begin a project to construct 2 pools, both a recreational pool and a lap pool, and a new pool support building at the site. The construction is anticipated to start this spring, and the grand opening is anticipated in the second half of 2021.
It's been neat to see the requests for bids go into the paper.
The Civic Center project, as you're well aware, has been taking place, or the visioning for it has been taking place over several months. And the selection process for a development partner for the nearly 10-acre site is underway, and the recommendations will be shared with council this spring. So we're going to be bringing more information back to you in just a few months on the Civic Center project. Council has committed $4 million towards this project through the Legacy Fund. One of the other existing Legacy Fund projects is a project at the Sacramento Children's Museum. Council has approved $200,000, and that was as of June of 2018. We came back to you in the fall of 2019 and provided information on the museum's visioning. And part of the funding has already been used for concepts and designs, for fundraising and board development, operating costs and expenses, as well as a feasibility study for a future capital campaign. The feasibility study is currently underway. We anticipate that it will be complete in late February 2020, and that will receive the report findings shortly thereafter. It's also anticipated that a future funding discussion will be needed this spring, and it will be folded into the upcoming Community Enhancement Fund grant cycle. At this time, approximately $2 million or more will be needed to move the first 2 phases of the capital project forward. And the Future Youth Center, we've touched on this project a few times tonight. And although it's not currently a Legacy Fund project, just yesterday the dedication of the Youth Center took place at the Investment Circle location here in Rancho Cordova. This, as you know, is a partnership between the city and Center for Praise Ministries. We have entered into a lease agreement, so 25 years lease with an option for another 25 years at the cost of $1 per year. Visioning for the space is going to take place over 2020, and we anticipate that we're going to need $2 million or more to renovate this facility and bring the former church site into a modern youth center. Like the Children's Museum, we anticipate coming back to you this spring and folding it into the Community Enhancement Fund grant cycle discussions. I'm going to invite up Albert Stricker to provide an update on the Little League project.
How much more money do you need? That's coming up.
I like how Stacy primed the pump and asked for 30 grand, and now you're going to present this one.
All right, let's do it. So potentially a little bit more than that. Good evening, Mayor Sander and council members. Albert Stricker with the Public Works Department. And the Little League has a long history in the city of Rancho Cordova. And unfortunately, some of the facilities are showing significant wear and tear. So a team, including collaborating with Rancho Cordova Little League, the Park District, and the School District, and city representatives have come together to identify measures that could improve the facility. Specific items identified along that road are to renovate the fields, new fencing, backstops, bleachers, batting cages, entryway, plaza, concession stand, and parking is a significant challenge. In looking at the project, these improvements could be phased in several ways, and we've identified in collaboration with Rancho Cordova Little League and the Park District and School District, those potential options. A fund phase 1A, which would be a collaboration with the Park District, Little League, and the city of Rancho Cordova, is $150,000 to improve the backstop, bleachers, concrete, fences and equipment, and very limited field work in that westernmost and largest field. A phase 1B addressing the two middle fields would add the plaza, snack bar with restrooms, improve backstops, bleachers, fences, and equipment in fields. And one of the big issues that we've been dealing with is parking is extremely tight adjacent to the Little League. And in collaboration with the church on the north side of Zinfandel, we've identified locations to increase parking capacity there. Council has committed $3 million to this project already. To move forward with phases 1A and B, an additional approximately $2.5 million would be needed. Looking to the future to phase 2, that would improve the final field and relocate and renovate the batting cages. And that would be an additional up to $1 million depending upon the level of improvements that were installed there. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
The grand total is, I'm sorry. We're adding all three of these lines? No.
It's up to approximately $6.5 million.
6.5, okay.
So is the school site, is that a hard boundary between Little League site and the school site in terms of improvements that could be done closer to the school buildings?
We've had significant conversation with the school district for what is feasible. They're required to have a certain amount of hard space and a certain amount of green space. And based on that significant conversation and negotiation, this is where we've landed. One of the key features that the school district has requested is that it is optionally open between the green spaces and the hardscape. So certain measures, including movable fences, would be installed along with these improvements to allow this were to operate again as a more full-time school.
So that's just in the case that it might be reactivated as a school site, as opposed to a current requirement.
That's correct.
So is all that in writing?
Not formally in writing at this time.
Don't you think it needs to be part of a formal contract?
That's certainly a measure we can take.
It just seems to me, I mean, not that anybody on the school board today and actually it seems to me we need an agreement with the Park District also, but not that anyone on either of those boards would turn around tomorrow and do something different, but 10 years, 15 years down the road, you don't know who will be there.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be a city-managed project as opposed to a school district-managed project?
It's anticipated for that Phase 1A. It's actually anticipated that the Park District would manage that particular project. For Phases 1B and Phase 2, it would be a collaboration with the school district. And we've evaluated various general contracting options that could potentially save some significant dollars and utilizing some of the school district services for general contracting.
Okay. Yeah, there's a careful balance there. I mean, we've had some hiccups, I would say, in the girls softball complex, some unanticipated alterations, some due to ed code, some due to, I'm not sure. Not enough conversation perhaps between the parties, some alterations to that project that we might have to go and retrofit at a future date. But I just want to be sure we learn a lot about that and try to be as efficient as possible in how this is rolled out, including tapping, significant volunteer resources that are possible. And actually, not just for this project, but for the one that we just talked about, the youth center. Cyrus, yesterday you called for, volunteers and donations in that room. And I was standing next to you when about 3 of them walked up, or at least 2 of them walked up. And one was mentioned previously of people saying, I can do a whole swath of the contracting here for an extremely reduced rate. We have to be sure that we have a structure that would allow that.
We also
That's the question.
In both of those cases, though, we need to ensure that either the requirements of city money or school district money does not put limitations or burdensome regulations on their volunteering.
Is there a nonprofit that could manage this and escape some of the difficulties we have with public contracting? Whatever that would take, I would say we would be interested in pursuing.
Personally, I would say I don't see how that's legal in any way, considering it's government funding going into it on 2 different plots of government land. So we're under whatever the constraints are that come with that.
Well, when you're talking about the school district.
And the park district, and it's our money.
Yeah, but that wouldn't apply to the youth center.
I do agree with Mr. Terry's comments.
Yeah,
in general,
we're the
that
leaseholder.
Anytime our property or our money is actively involved in a project, we need to be compliant, not.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, well, first I'll just state as my personal opinion that there are ridiculous state regulations that ban private contributions to public projects. That is insanity. But that's the regulation we live with due to our state legislature. But 2, if there is a structure that allows us to be wiser with dollars, then I would say we should pursue that.
We'll certainly keep an open mind to any structures that allow us within the regulations to operate as efficiently as possible. As you had mentioned also, particularly on the school district's property that is governed by the Division of State Architect. So there are some significant challenges in designing and constructing underneath that supervision.
Under the ed code.
Hey, Albert, just 2 really quick questions. Are we getting new bathrooms with this?
Bathrooms would be a part of the snack bar, so yes.
Yeah, awesome. Excited about the new bathrooms that you guys control. Second, is there any chance we could turn all the stuff they're paving over into parking? Just right there, just all that. They got rid of the basketball courts, they got rid of the gymnasium, they got rid of everything. And I mean, if we're willing to, kick in the concrete and stripe, is there any chance they would let us just start parking here? Because this is all gone now. They got rid of this, got rid of that, got rid of all that. It's just concrete. And they got rid of the basketball courts here, so there's nothing here anymore. So we could actually drive in here and go whoop, and that would
But you kind of have an access problem.
Well, you'd go out, they don't show it right here, but there's big old, you just go right out this way.
No, I understand. I agree with you. Okay, but your only access to this area is this 1-lane little constricted area right here.
They're taking this away too, so this is gone.
Which?
This thing. Boop, boop. That's gone now too. So now it's just whoosh, straight path.
Okay, we need traffic control.
Yes, that's all right. I'm willing to do that just so I don't have to park way down here to walk my kid all the way here to get my nachos, then walk back. I meant to watch his game.
But, okay, but wait a minute. You've got it, Phase 1B parking. The church offered, this will be a huge, I'm not sure that all that's needed, maybe over here, but this will be a huge
With as many new
increase.
members as poor Dennis is bringing into this dang thing, this is full. You have to pay people to get here and here. Just right, look how easy that is. Look, just stripe right there, and Garrett can park right there. So close.
So I have a different question about that exact same spot, because I know at one point there was a discussion about what technology or other products we could use that might be like a rug that you could roll out that you could roll back up at some other point so you could temporarily use that space for another field. Where did that conversation go? I know that at one point we had explored using this blacktop for additional, probably T-ball fields.
Good question.
That, I'm not familiar with that particular conversation of temporarily rolling out a playing surface.
Or like leaving it out for the season and taking it off. Was I think what we had talked about.
That's certainly something that
Okay.
we could look into more closely. What we have identified is that the school district unfortunately has not been open to using that area for additional parking. And in working with Dennis La Mancha and the Rancho Cordova Little League team, this field layout does meet their needs, including for T-ball.
Okay. I think part of the issue, council, that we have, and David and I have tried to address this at the 2x2, and it's probably time to bring it up again, is part of this is a political issue. That the school board is unwilling to go to their staff basically and basically decide this is no longer a school site and that it's not going to be in the future. And so the issue that we're running into with a lot of this space is their design is we got to keep it this way because someday we may make it a school again. And we want to reserve the right to have that. And if we don't have the right spacing, then we're going to have to go back to the Little League and the city and the Park District and convince them to give up parts of what is the Little League site, right? If the school board would just say that's never going to be a school again, which I can tell you Sac City Unified has done that with multiple sites and said, these schools are now closed, they're never opening again as a school, even though they did 7-Eleven committees. If anybody wants to know what that is, I'll explain it later. But they had committees that said, because whenever you put these committees together to decide what to do with a school, inevitably you get a lot of people that didn't want it to close, right? And so the first thing that they do is they say, you've got to save it to someday be a school. That's what everybody tries to do. At least in Sac City, for a handful of them, they've turned them into community centers. They've had nonprofits take them over and manage a lot of them. The school district is still managing this themselves. They put their own programs there. They put training facilities there and other things there. We probably just need to continue to press upon them. We could have a much better Little League facility if they just agree this is never going to be a school again. So I just want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page about this additional space. The reason they're not being flexible is they're trying to reserve the design that will still meet the code to make it a school someday.
So I want to provide an alternate perspective. It's probably been almost 10 years since the school district closed Cordova Lane and Riverview. And I was on the 2x2 at that point, and we told the superintendent at that point that we truly did not want them to tear down either one of these properties, period. And the example, you've got to go back.
That's not what I'm
Okay, no. But you got to go back to San Juan Unified in the 80s and the early 90s when they closed a whole bunch of schools. And I'm thinking of the one on Pope Avenue, and I'm thinking of the one on, starts with a G or a J, in the vicinity of Howe and one of the cross streets in there, north of Fair Oaks Boulevard. And they sold all the property off for housing. So what happened? When you didn't have enough people living in that area, you didn't need the school. But when you turn those school sites into housing, and all these people came in with their kids, then you needed the schools. And they learned a very hard lesson there. And we asked the school district specifically to not tear down these buildings, to reuse them some way. And so the Park District went into Riverview for a while and provided programming. And now the STEM Academy is over there. So that's a really good example of how a former school was used for something temporary and then got reused for school. And the school district actually has a need for the space they've got in this building right now.
But it's not a school.
Okay, but maybe it will be at some point.
We have a lot of
If they open this school, I agree with you. If they sell a school site and put housing in, they're creating another problem.
They are.
That's not a wise strategy. But going to this and saying this is going to continue to be our training facility and a daycare facility and a couple other things and saying it's never going to be a school again means that we could reutilize that space in a completely different way. The constraints that our staff in Little League are dealing with are because the school district is still saying someday that might be a school, so we're not giving up the space. That's the reality. Now, your scenario, that is true. They don't have to do that either, but they also can say this is not going to be a school site.
Could it, this is probably worth exploring. I mean, we brought this up before.
We brought this up before.
Were they
and
against you guys making
They
it?
didn't really.
They didn't really engage.
Yeah, they just said, yeah, that's what would need to happen, and that the policy for now is that it may be a school someday. So I'm just, again, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of what our other conversations have been about this issue is that blacktop, the amount of grass, how much parking, all those things revolve around an ed code that says you need this if you're going to put X amount of kids on said site.
And if I remember right, Donald, if it was a charter school, some of those regulations that apply to this as just a regular public school would not apply.
To be honest with you, my opinion, having dealt with putting kids at the old Marshall School downtown, that was a charter school, where charter schools didn't have to be put in Field Act compliant schools, and that's the earthquake.
Yeah,
so we
right.
put kids there, and one of the first things that my new superintendent realized was, while the charter school doesn't have that requirement, the school district placing them in a site that they own does have that requirement. So we ended up mid-year having to move those kids to Thomas Jefferson that we had just closed. So there are times, but again, Linda, and again, I think the world of what Riverview is doing, but the odds that we're going to have an explosion of additional children in these neighborhoods, and if you open another school, really what odds are what you're going to end up doing is exacerbating a problem that you already have, and you're going to have another school go under enrolled in the neighborhood. There's only so many kids to go into a neighborhood.
The state of Utah for years has done projection planning, and everybody knows that neighborhoods are cyclical. They start off with young people, and 20 years later, it's all older people, and then they move out or pass away, and the whole cycle starts all over again. So I would look reluctantly at that. However, what I'd really like to talk about is Phase 1B. So it's obvious that we're being asked to approve an addition of a lot of money for a variety of projects, okay, in terms of what's in the legacy fund. And we don't want to exceed the capacity of the legacy fund, but as Stacy has pointed out, it's going to continue to grow over the next few years. So I'm wondering, obviously the Phase 1A is not a large ticket item. Phase 1B is a large ticket item. Phase 2 is a large ticket item. So under Phase 1B, it's obvious that blackstop, bleachers, fences, equipment, fields, parking are really important to playing ball. But what's the possibility of simply delaying plaza and snack bar replacement for another year, as opposed to funding that whole package this year? And I know that's not the way they would prefer to have it. It's just that we also need to ensure that we are spending to what we have as opposed to just needing to draw additional money that we may not have in a current year.
I'm not sure we're actually at a cash flow discussion yet because we're only partially through this list of projects. So I don't know if we should make a decision with only part of the information
No, but
in hand.
we need to bring it up in terms. Well, but we did.
No,
We
I'm
just
just saying-
approved $30,000.
We did, but you're
for
not asking
sign.
for any of this for this fiscal year. Are you asking for this right now?
Any of those options are possible for city council.
But they would be in the next Measure H,
They would be in our next
Yeah.
level
right?
discussion.
You're not asking for it right now.
When I get to the next slide, we're going to look at everything in
Yep.
totality so you can see what's been approved
Okay.
and what we anticipate coming, and it
I think
might
we
help
should
the
continue
discussion.
that. Let's continue the
that's fine.
presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Albert. And we can go back if we need to. But we have taken you through a peek at least each of the existing legacy fund projects, and this will give us a chance to now look at it as a whole. So the legacy project balance as of June 30th, 2019 was approximately $8.6 million. And you can see, even after accounting for the $2.1 million that's being allocated to the fund this fiscal year, as well as some additional revenues anticipated, most of the legacy fund has already been committed to projects such as girls softball, the pool project, et cetera. Taking all of this into account and looking at the future estimated legacy fund, we think that the future fund will have approximately $2.6 million. This will leave a shortfall in the sense that if you wanted to move forward with the full Rancho Cordova Little League project, that could total up to $6.5 million. And if we wanted to look forward also to the Sacramento Children's Museum project, specifically phases 1 and 2, you would likely need an additional $2 million for that. And the youth center, if we just use some very preliminary projections, we would also need $2 million for that project. So you have different options. You could pre-commit future funding out of the legacy fund and say, for example, we're going to pre-commit $2.1 million each fiscal year between fiscal year 2021 all the way to fiscal year 2022-23. You could say, come back to us in the spring when we have our detailed discussions about the fiscal year 2021 Community Enhancement Fund grant cycle. None of the above, these are all options for you. But the one thing to really think about is if you do pre-commit funding to the projects on the screen, you're essentially saying no to any future projects that might pop up based upon what we have been allocating or council has been allocating each year towards the Community Enhancement Fund.
And that was really my point, because we have now, I would guess that we're in our third year of projects that have popped up out of the clear blue. So the Fong property popped up out of the clear blue. This wonderful youth center popped up out of the clear blue. The Children's Museum popped up out of the clear blue because all of a sudden McKesson decided to leave. So that's 3 instances in 3 years of where we've had an incredible project that we really want, that we could not have anticipated, and because we've been conservative, I can't believe I'm saying this, but because we've been conservative in our spending approach, we've been able to bring these projects into the city and online.
I mean, we've been saving for things that we didn't know what we were going to spend it on.
We also
Absolutely.
have,
And we had things we thought we'd spend it on that we
But
hadn't.
if we commit everything, for, as Stacy just said, if we commit everything rather than kind of do it the way you would in your home-based budget and plan for things in future years, in out years, then all of a sudden we've committed ourselves for the next 3 years, and nobody knows what could come up at that point.
well, there are also other sources of funding. We have general fund reserves. We also have park renovation fee. I don't know what the fund balance is for park renovation fees, but technically those can be spent on any of these projects as well. Because it's poorly named.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic. We've got $4 million in there for the Mill Station Civic Center, but we've been noodling around a $35 million project. So obviously there's funding in other places.
I think for, Council, for the overall vision that we've had related to the Civic Center, and when we discussed the availability of close to $35 million for the Civic Center, was in fact counting on some of the other funds, and especially some of the reserve funds that we have. So that's been the premise of some of the work that we've done and the funding plans that we have put in place.
So if we fund all of these, are we potentially delaying the Civic Center?
No, I think what we're saying, we're basically saying if these 3 projects are priority for you, the Little League, the Children's Museum, and the Youth Center, one way to fund all of those is to simply pre-commit your future legacy funds for these projects, and that doesn't change anything that you've already allocated or decided on the prior legacy funds. So the top list pretty much stays intact. That we honor that list.
Okay. Just my preliminary, my conversations, I would say at the board level for the Children's Museum, $2 million would probably be more than they're gonna need in phase 1, based on the estimates that they've been collecting. Not a whole lot less than that, but it would be less than $2 million. 1 to 1.5 would be more of my guess right now. But again, we'll know more about the capital campaign end of next month, and kind of what the timing looks for that. But depending on that, I mean, it may roll into this next fiscal, some of it, not this next fiscal year, the year after, depending on
the timing, that would make sense.
Depending on timing, yeah. I just reading the tea leaves a little bit on that one. So that there may be some savings there from what your estimates are. That's a good placeholder, I think, for now. But we may have some.
I don't really have any personal difficulty saying, these are legacy projects we've identified, and for this current fiscal year, which we're about to vote on in a couple months, and the next 2, this is our intention.
Yeah.
It seems reasonable cash flow wise to be able to do that. And as we said before, I think we could actually, if we needed to, for example, with the youth center or Little League, loan ourselves something from another fund and just pay it back the following year.
Yeah, frankly, we as staff are not too concerned about the cash flow.
Yeah.
It's really just.
It's not like we're in a cash short position in the city.
That's really kind of true, and it's also kind of ironic. Think about what we did when we first became a city. We had to come up with $1 million, and it was kind of hard then, to fix the Kilgore Cemetery. $1 million. And now you look at this, and what we're talking about, the amount of money that is being spent, has been spent, is going to be spent, but just that one thing, and that was something that we were so proud of, and it's so beautiful, but it was $1 million. And as a new city, that was much more than we ever thought of.
Yeah.
But we did it. And we've gone further down the road, and people in 2014 passed sales tax because they trusted us. And they can see where that money goes because they ask, they say, this is something that we need, this is something that we want. I think we're handling the money very wisely, and I think people believe that. We're doing it well. So I don't see why we wouldn't be able to look forward on this. I don't want to start spending money that, okay, in next 5 years, we're going to collect $40 million, and we're going to spend it now. No, we're not talking about that. But I think as we've grown 17 years now, in this coming July, I'm pretty happy with what we've been able to do as a city. And what we're doing right now is a continuation of that.
Well, it's a wonderful problem to have, to be able to even have this discussion.
Mr. Mayor, just in response to Councilmember Terry's comment about the cost, these are really high-level estimates. Any of these costs could change based on the design we get into, based on the actual bid that we get for the project. So these are high-level estimates, but I think the point of this slide is that for us to be all of these, we need to pre-commit some, our 2 years or 3 years of our legacy funds. And then this allows us to start working on those in earnest and get the design done, get the estimate done, and ultimately the real cost is when we get the bids for the project.
I think that's a reasonable approach.
So do we need a motion on this, or?
This is informational, right?
I think it would be, we will to formalize this as we go through our Measure H process and discussion, but we wanted to get a broad or overall council direction. Is this the right approach? And this is where you want us to go.
I don't know if it's appropriate at this time, but I would just say that as we move forward with Measure H under the Children's Museum, beyond the legacy budget, I will be requesting a direct allocation along the same lines, not necessarily the same numbers that the Air Show and the Community Council are starting to receive. So direct support each year for operational. And obviously, you already know that we did some of the 200,000 that was allocated, we used for that this year.
Thank you for that feedback. One thing I did want to bring to your attention, when you adopted the budget in June, you had indicated if revenues come in higher than anticipated, you wanted us to restore the budgets for both Public Works and Economic Development because we had taken funding away from those two areas in order to balance it at $8.2 million. So per your prior direction, we are restoring those two budgets to the initial amounts that they requested during the grant application cycle this past year.
How much is that?
I think total, it was approximately $110,000 between both areas.
There you go, Micah. You're welcome.
That is horrible. That is horrible. That is horrible.
Oh, God.
So thank you for your feedback tonight, and we will come back to you this spring as we discuss the Community Enhancement Fund
And
grant
this
cycle.
was the prior council direction, so we're following through with it.
We're just continuing. All right. Thank you very much. That was item 12.3. Item 13, council request for future agenda items.
So I got one, only because one of my friends sitting up here had the same problem that a house that I lived in had. I'd really like to have a conversation at some point around building codes and what control or influence the city has, especially when it comes to home building codes, in particular, vertical vents, dryer vents for clothes dryers, and the horrible design of having a vertical 15-foot pipe that fills up with lint and eventually can cause fires. Like I heard one of our staff members that might be involved with the regulation of home building and codes had, but we had somebody experience that issue, and I've experienced that issue, and I think I'd really love to hear what things we could have influence under.
I would like to agree with that since I'm one of those people that's experiencing the house possibly catching on fire from events now full up of stuff and water and birds and my laundry. It's wonderful.
And we're not talking our 1960s homes. We're talking our newer homes in town.
Could I suggest the possibility of a meeting with just the two council members who are interested in this topic?
I think so.
With me in the
That's fine.
building department. You may hear the code and our limited authority under certain circumstances and not wanting.
That'd be helpful.
You make me think I should go home and look at the side of the house and see if there's a dryer
To
vent there.
immediately go look at the side of the house, not even joking. Like,
Well, that wouldn't
it's
help for us because ours goes straight up.
straight up, and so it's on weird tile, and so it goes straight up, and so it fills up, and it's been catching fire in some people's houses because there's no way to get up to clean it, and it doesn't pipe down. Yeah, I just paid a guy to clean it. It didn't help. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Do you have a question? Our new agendas and how we're doing this, now they're going to close the regular session, go to closed session, how is that going to be included in this new?
It won't be at this time. So
Okay.
same process as prior.
Okay, and with that lead-in, we are going to adjourn to closed session, and we are going to hold thoughts of our accident victims from this past weekend as we adjourn to closed session. And Garrett's friend. All right, thank you all very much.